In the shadowy halls of Marwood Manor, a guest vanishes into the night, leaving only a blood-stained napkin and a cryptic photograph marked E.M. Hercule Poirot, the master detective, steps into a web of secrets where a decades-old murder festers beneath a family's gilded facade. Was Clarence Vane silenced for unearthing the truth? Who is the mysterious E.M., and what deadly secret binds the manor's past to its present? With every clue a hidden locket, a coded map, a bloodied scarf danger closes in. Can Poirot unravel the mystery before another life is lost? Chapter 1. The Vanishing Guest. The train rattled through the English countryside, its rhythmic clatter a soothing counterpoint to the storm brewing in Hercule Poirot's mind. The little Belgian detective, immaculate in his pinstripe suit and polished spats, sat by the window, his waxed mustache twitching as he reread the letter clutched in his gloved hands. The paper, heavy and embossed with the Marwood family crest, bore an invitation from Lord Reginald Marwood to join a weekend gathering at Marwood Manor, but it was the postscript, scrawled in a hurried hand, that had piqued Poirot's curiosity. Monsieur Poirot, your discretion is required. A matter of utmost delicacy threatens my family's honor. I implore your assistance. Poirot folded the letter, his green eyes narrowing. A matter of delicacy, eh? He murmured to himself, tapping his temple. The little gray cells. They are already at work, non? He glanced at Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, who dozed opposite, a newspaper sliding from his lap. Poirot smiled faintly. Hastings, with his earnest heart and penchant for the obvious, would no doubt find the mystery thrilling, but Poirot sensed something darker beneath Lord Marwood's words. As the train slowed, Poirot nudged Hastings awake. Mon ami, we approach our destination. Prepare yourself for the grandeur of Marwood Manor, and perhaps for intrigue. Hastings blinked, rubbing his eyes. Intrigue, Poirot? It's just a weekend in the country, isn't it? Bit of shooting, bit of brandy, that sort of thing. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We shall see, Hastings, we shall see. Marwood Manor loomed against the dusk, its ivy-clad towers silhouetted like sentinels. A chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce crunched up the gravel drive, depositing Poirot and Hastings at the entrance, where a liveried footman awaited. The air was crisp, scented with pine and the promise of rain. Poirot adjusted his Homburg hat, his gaze sweeping the manor's mullioned windows, some glowing with warm light, others dark and watchful. Impressive pile, eh? Hastings said, hefting their valises. Must be centuries old. Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, but it is not the age of the stones that interests me. It is the secrets they guard. Inside, the great hall was a symphony of oak and opulence. A chandelier glittered above a sweeping staircase, and ancestral portraits stared down with haughty disdain. Lord Reginald Marwood, a tall man with silver hair and a weary brow, greeted them warmly. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, welcome. I cannot express my gratitude for your coming on such short notice. Poirot bowed. It is my pleasure, Lord Marwood. Your letter, it suggests a matter most urgent, non? Marwood's smile faltered. Indeed, but let us discuss it privately, after dinner. First, you must meet my guests. He gestured toward the drawing room, where laughter and the clink of glasses spilled out. The drawing room was alive with color and conversation. Lady Beatrice Marwood, Lord Reginald's younger sister, glided forward, her sapphire gown shimmering. Monsieur Poirot, what a delight. I've read of your exploits. Tell me, do you ever tire of unmasking villains? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Mademoiselle, the villain, he is like a puzzle. Each piece, when placed, brings satisfaction to the little gray cells. Lady Beatrice laughed, and introduced the others. Dr. Lionel Hargrove, a jovial physician with a penchant for port. Miss Evelyn Carter, a sharp-eyed journalist whose smile seemed to hide 1,000 questions, and Mr. Clarence Vane, a newcomer to the Marwood circle. Vane was lean, with a sallow face and restless hands that toyed with a silver cigarette case. His dark eyes met Poirot's briefly, then darted away. "Mr. Vane," Poirot said, inclining his head, "you are, perhaps, a friend of the family?" Vane's smile was thin. "An acquaintance, Monsieur Poirot. I'm here on business." "Business at a country house?" Hastings interjected, puzzled. "Bit odd, isn't it?" Vane's gaze hardened, but before he could reply, a gong sounded. Summoning them to dinner. The dining room was a vision of decadence, its long mahogany table gleaming under candlelight. Crystal goblets sparkled, and silver cutlery clinked against fine china. Poirot, seated between Lady Beatrice and Dr. Hargrove, observed the guests with the precision of a watchmaker. Lord Marwood presided at the head, his forced joviality betrayed by the tightness of his jaw. Miss Carter, opposite Poirot, scribbled discreetly in a notebook, her pen pausing only to sip her wine. Vane, seated near the foot, seemed distracted, his fork hovering over his untouched console. "Tell us, Monsieur Poirot," Dr. Hargrove boomed, "what brings a detective of your caliber to our humble gathering? Surely not the pheasant." Poirot smiled, dabbing his lips with a napkin. "The pheasant, it is exquisite, Doctor. But I am here at Lord Marwood's invitation to enjoy the company and perhaps to exercise the mind." Miss Carter's eyes flicked up. "Exercise the mind? Sounds like there's a mystery afoot. Care to share, Lord Marwood?" Marwood coughed, nearly choking on his soup. "Nonsense, Evelyn. Monsieur Poirot is here for a rest, nothing more." Vane's knife scraped his plate, the sound jarring. Poirot noted the man's pallor, the faint sheen of sweat on his brow. "Monsieur Vane," Poirot said smoothly, "you seem unwell. The country air, it does not agree with you?" Vane forced a laugh. "I'm fine, thank you. Just a touch of nerves." He reached for his wine, his hand trembling. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, hunting, the London season, but Poirot's attention remained on Vane. Man's unease was palpable, his glances darting toward the shadowed corners of the room. As the footman cleared the soup course, Vane excused himself, mumbling about needing air. Poirot's eyes followed him to the French doors leading to the hen terrace. Minutes passed, and the main course roast lamb with rosemary was served. Lady Beatrice regaled the table with a tale of her travels in Cairo, but Poirot's focus wavered. Vane had not returned. He leaned toward Hastings, whispering, "Mon ami, observe the empty chair. Our Mr. Vane, he is absent too long." Hastings frowned. "Probably just stepped out for a smoke, Poirot. No need to—" A sharp cry cut through the room, silencing Lady Beatrice mid-sentence. It came from the terrace, a sound of shock rather than pain. Lord Marwood rose, his face ashen. What the devil was that? Poirot was already on his feet, moving with surprising agility for a man of his stature. "Messieurs, mesdames, remain calm. I shall investigate." He gestured for Hastings to follow, ignoring the murmurs of alarm. The terrace was cloaked in darkness, the only light spilling from the dining room. A cold wind rustled the ivy, carrying the scent of impending rain. Poirot's patent leather. Shoes clicked on the flagstones as he scanned the area. "Hastings, the torch, vite!" Hastings fumbled for his pocket torch, its beam cutting through the gloom. It fell upon a table near the balustrade, where a single napkin lay, crumpled and stained with a dark, wet patch. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over the fabric. "Mon Dieu," he breathed. "It is blood? Blood?" Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot, where's Vane?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the torchlight. "That, mon ami, is the question." He straightened, his gaze sweeping the terrace, then beyond to the manicured lawns sloping toward the woods. Monsieur Vane has vanished, and this napkin, it tells a story most sinister. Lord Marwood appeared at the doorway, his voice tight. "Poirot, what's happened? Was that a screen?" Poirot held up the napkin, careful not to touch the stain. "Lord Marwood, we have a problem." "Your guest, Mr.?" "Vane is gone, and this set tachet suggests violence." Lady Beatrice, who had followed her brother, clutched her pearls. "Violence? Here? Oh, Reginald, what have you brought upon us?" Marwood's face drained of color. I don't understand." "Vane was just enough," Poirot said. Sharply, "We must search the grounds at once. Hastings, alert the staff. Lord Marwood, you will accompany me. The rest return to the dining room and await instructions." As the guests retreated, their whispers buzzing like bees, Poirot led Marwood and Hastings toward the lawn. The torch beam danced over rose bushes and marble statues, revealing nothing but shadows. At the edge of the terrace, Poirot paused, his keen eyes catching a glint in the grass. He bent down, retrieving a silver cigarette case, veins unmistakable. "From dinner. Curio," Poirot murmured, opening the case. Inside, nestled among the cigarettes, was a folded scrap of paper. He unfolded it, revealing a torn photograph. It showed a woman, her face half obscured by the rip, but her dark hair and elegant posture were striking. On the back, in faint pencil, were the initials Eam. Hastings peered over his shoulder. "Who's that, Poirot? And why was it in Vane's case?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "These are questions for the little gray cells, Hastings. This woman, she is the key. I feel it. And Monsieur Vane, his disappearance, it is no accident." Marwood, silent until now, spoke hoarsely. "Monsieur Poirot, what does this mean? Is Vane dead?" Poirot met his gaze, his expression grave. "That, Lord Marwood, we cannot yet say. But the blood, the photograph, the cry, they point to a mystery most profound. We shall find Monsieur Vane, alive or otherwise, and the truth, it will be revealed." As rain began to patter on the terrace, Poirot pocketed the photograph, his mind already racing. The vanishing guest was only the beginning, and Marwood Manor, with its secrets and shadows, held answers he was determined to uncover. The search continued for an hour, but the grounds yielded no trace of Clarence Vane. The staff, led by the stoic butler, Mr. Grayson, combed the gardens and stables, while Poirot and Hastings returned to the manor to examine Vane's room. The guest chamber was sparse, its only personal touch a leather valise in the wardrobe. Inside, Poirot found a notebook filled with cryptic shorthand and a single letter addressed to Vane, postmarked London, with no return address. It read, "The truth about E.M. is buried at Marwood. Trust no one." Poirot closed the notebook, his mind a whirl of connections. "Hastings, this E.M., she is at the heart of it all. Vane came here seeking her truth, and someone in this house did not wish him to find it." Hastings shivered, glancing at the rain-streaked window. "But who, Poirot? And where's Vane now?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with resolve. "That, mon ami, we shall discover. The game, it has begun, and Hercule Poirot does not lose." As the clock struck midnight, Poirot descended to the drawing-room, where the guests awaited, their faces a gallery of fear and suspicion. He held up the blood-stained napkin, letting the silence stretch. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said at last, "tonight a man has vanished, and a crime, I fear, has been committed. I, Hercule Poirot, will find the truth, and the one who hides, it beware." The chapter closed with Poirot's gaze sweeping the room, each guest a piece in the puzzle he was determined to solve. The mystery of the vanishing guest, only the first thread in a tapestry of secrets. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Gallery. The storm had arrived at Marwood Manor, with a ferocity that seemed to mirror the unease settling over its inhabitants. Rain lashed against the tall, arched windows, and the wind howled through the ancient oaks, lining the estate's drive. Inside, the grandeur of the manor's dining hall still lingered from the evening's opulent dinner, though the air now carried a chill that no fire could dispel. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the late hour, stood alone in the dimly lit corridor, his polished shoes clicking softly against the polished marble floor. His sharp eyes, glinting with curiosity, fixed on the blood-stained napkin he held delicately between gloved fingers. It was the only tangible remnant of Mr. Clarence Vane, the mysterious guest who had vanished mid-meal, leaving the household in a state of quiet panic. Poirot's mind churned, his little gray cells already weaving connections from the evenings. Chaos. The cryptic letter that had summoned him to Marwood Manor, penned in an elegant but anonymous hand, had promised a scandal. Yet Vane's disappearance, marked by that crimson stain, suggested something far darker. The torn photograph he'd found in Vane's abandoned coda woman's face, half obscured but hauntingly familiar, gnawed his intuition. It was no coincidence, he was certain, that Vane's vanishing had occurred under the watchful gaze of Lord Reginald Marwood's ancestral portraits, which lined the manor's grand gallery. With a decisive nod, Poirot tucked the napkin into his pocket and set off toward the gallery, determined to uncover the first threads of this tangled mystery. The portrait gallery of Marwood Manor was a cavernous hall, its walls adorned with centuries of Marwood lineage captured in oil and canvas. The storm's lightning flashed through tall windows, casting fleeting shadows that danced across the faces of long-dead lords and ladies. Poirot's cane tapped rhythmically as he moved, his eyes scanning each portrait with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a gem. The air was heavy with the scent of aged wood and varnish, and the faint creak of the manor's ancient bones seemed to whisper secrets. He paused before a particularly striking painting, its subject a woman with porcelain skin, auburn hair cascading in waves, and eyes that seemed to follow him with an almost accusatory stare. The plaque beneath read, Lady Eleanor Marwood, 1898 to 1905. Resemblance to the woman in Vane's photograph was unmistakable. The same delicate jawline, the same piercing gaze, though the photograph's torn edge obscured half her face. Poirot leaned closer, his mustache twitching as he considered the implications. Lady Eleanor, the late wife of Lord Reginald's father, had died 20 years prior, her death officially deemed a tragic accident. Yet the photograph suggested otherwise a connection to Vane, a man who had appeared at the manor under dubious pretenses and vanished just as mysteriously. Poirot's fingers traced the frame's ornate gilding, searching for any clue the painting might conceal. Mon Dieu, he murmured, what secrets do you guard, Lady Eleanor? His reverie was shattered by a piercing scream that echoed through the manor, sharp and raw, cutting through the storm's rumble. Poirot's head snapped toward the sound, his instincts honed by years of unraveling human folly. He hurried toward the source, his cane a steady counterpoint to his brisk pace. The scream had come from the far end of the gallery, where a narrow staircase descended to the servants' quarters. As he rounded a corner, he found a young maid crumpled on the floor, her apron askew and her face pale as moonlight. A small crowd of servants had begun to gather, their whispers a low hum of fear. Mademoiselle, are you injured? Poirot knelt beside the maid, his voice calm but commanding. Her eyes fluttered open, wide with terror, and she clutched something tightly in her hand. Gently, Poirot pried her fingers open to reveal a silver locket, its surface engraved with intricate filigree and the initials E.M. His heart quickened. This was no coincidence. Who are you, mademoiselle, and what has caused such distress? The maid, trembling, managed to whisper, Clara, sir, Clara Wren. I saw something in the gallery. A shadow. It moved. Her voice broke, and she clutched Poirot's sleeve. I thought it was her Lady Eleanor. They say she walks these halls at night. Poirot's expression remained composed, though his mind raced. Ghostly tailies were often the refuge of those hiding earthly crimes, and he suspected Clara's fright was rooted in something far more tangible. Calmez-vous, Clara. Tell Poirot exactly what you saw. Clara's story tumbled out in fits and starts. She had been tidying the gallery, as was her duty after dinner, when she noticed a figure lurking near Lady Eleanor's portrait. Thinking it a guest out of place, she approached, only to see the figure vanish into the shadows. In her panic, she had tripped and fallen, clutching the locket she'd found near the portrait. It wasn't there before, sir, she insisted. I swear it. Poirot examined the locket, its weight reassuringly solid in his hand. The initials, E.M., gleamed under the flickering light of a nearby sconce. Carefully, he opened it, expecting a miniature portrait or a lock of hair. Instead, he found a tiny slip of paper, folded tightly. With deft fingers, he unfolded it, revealing a single line of text written in a precise feminine hand. E.M. lives. The words sent a shiver through him, not of fear, but of exhilaration. Here was a clue, a thread to pull, a challenge to his intellect. He slipped the locket into his pocket, his mind already cataloging the possibilities. Was this a message from the past, or a deliberate plant to mislead? And why had Clara, a mere maid, been the one to find it? The servants, hovering nearby, watched him with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Among them was Mr. Grayson, the butler, his stern face betraying a flicker of unease. Mr. Grayson, Poirot called, his tone sharp. A word, if you please. The butler approached, his posture rigid. Yes, Monsieur Poirot? This locket, Poirot said, holding it up, but not revealing its contents. It bears the initials of Lady Eleanor Marwood. Can you explain its presence in the gallery? Grayson's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained steady. It is likely a family heirloom, sir. Lady Eleanor's belongings were scattered. After her passing, the maids often find such trinkets in forgotten corners. Forgotten corners, we? Poirot's smile was polite, but pointed. Yet this was found near her portrait, by a maid who claims to have seen a ghost. Most curious, would you not agree? Grayson's jaw tightened. The manner is old, sir. The servants are prone to superstition. I assure you there is no ghost. Being. Sir, Poirot replied, his tone light, but his eyes piercing. But I am not interested in ghosts, Mr. Grayson. I am interested in truths. And this locket, I think, holds one. He dismissed the butler with a nod, turning his attention back to Clara, who had regained some color. Mademoiselle Clara, you will show me exactly where you found this locket. Too de suite. Clara led him to the base of Lady Eleanor's portrait, her steps hesitant. The storm outside raged on, its thunder rattling the windows as Poirot examined the spot. The floor was polished oak, the wall unremarkable, save for the portrait's imposing frame. He ran his fingers along the frame's edge, searching for anything amiss. His persistence was rewarded when he felt a slight indentation, barely perceptible. With a gentle press, a small panel clicked open, revealing a shallow compartment within the wall. Inside was a single item, a fragment of a letter, its edges charred as if someone had tried to burn it. The handwriting matched the note in the locket, and though the text was incomplete, Poirot could make out a few words. Must flee danger. T.R. His mind seized on the initials. T.R. Thomas Reed, perhaps? The groundskeeper rumored to have been involved in Eleanor's death? The plot thickened, and Poirot's pulse quickened with the thrill of discovery. Mademoiselle Clara, he said, turning to the maid, you have done well to bring this to my attention. But tell me, Why were you in the gallery so late? Your duties, they are finished after dinner. None? Clara's eyes darted away, her fingers twisting in her apron. I couldn't sleep, sir. I thought I'd tidy a bit more. The gallery's always so eerie at night. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind remained sharp. Eerie, oui, but you are brave to face it alone. Or perhaps you were not alone? Clara's cheeks flushed, and she shook her head vehemently. No, sir. I swear, I was alone until the shadow. Poirot nodded, filing away her reaction for later scrutiny. He dismissed her with instructions to rest and speak to no one of the locket. As the servants dispersed, he remained in the gallery, the storm's fury a fitting backdrop to his thoughts. The locket, the note, the charred letter, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. Lady Eleanor's death, officially an accident, was clearly no such thing. And Vane, with his cryptic photograph and sudden disappearance, had been chasing that truth. He returned to the portrait, studying Eleanor's painted eyes. They seemed to challenge him, daring him to uncover what the manor's walls had hidden for 2 decades. Madame, he whispered, your story is not yet finished. Hercule Poirot will see to that. The night stretched on, and Poirot made his way to the library, seeking the manor's records. The vast room was a labyrinth of bookshelves, their contents meticulously organized, yet daunting in scope. He lit a single candle, its flame casting long shadows as he scanned the shelves for anything related to Eleanor Marwood. After an hour of searching, he found a leather-bound volume labeled Marwood Family History, 1880 to 1910. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded, but it contained a detailed account of Eleanor's life and her death. According to the record, Eleanor had fallen from a balcony during a storm, her body found at the base of the manor's west wing. The coroner had ruled it an accident, citing her known fondness for late-night walks. Yet the entry was curiously brief, lacking the detail afforded to other family members. Poirot's suspicions deepened. He cross-referenced the date of her death, August 12, 1905, and found a newspaper clipping tucked into the volume's back cover. The headline read, "Tragic Accident Claims Lady Marwood's Life." The article echoed the official report, but mentioned a groundskeeper, Thomas Reed, who had vanished shortly after, fueling village gossip. Poirot's fingers paused on the clipping. Reed's disappearance, the initials in the letter, the locket's message, they were no coincidence. He closed the book, his mind alight with possibilities. Vane had come to Marwood Manor for a reason, and that reason was tied to Eleanor's death. Had he been silenced to protect a secret? And if so, who stood to lose the most? As dawn approached, the storm began to abate, leaving only the drip of rainwater through cracked window panes. Poirot returned to his room, the locket and letter fragments safely stored in his case. He sat at the small desk, sketching a mental map of the manor's players. Lord Reginald, proud but evasive. Grayson, the butler, whose calm demeanor hid something unspoken. Clara, the frightened maid with a convenient discovery. And the unseen presence of Thomas Reed, whose shadow loomed over the past. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the heart of it lay with Eleanor and the truth of her death. He opened his notebook, jotting down his observations in his precise, elegant script. The locket's message, E.M. Lives, was the key. Was it a declaration of survival, a metaphor, or a taunt? And why had it surfaced now, 20 years after Eleanor's death, in the wake of Vane's disappearance? Poirot's pen paused, his eyes narrowing. The answer, he knew, lay within the manor's walls, hidden in its shadows and secrets. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, Poirot rose, his resolve unshaken. The gallery had given him a glimpse of the truth, but it was only the beginning. He would question Lord Marwood at breakfast, probe the butler's reticence, and uncover Clara's true role in this drama. The mystery of Clarence Vane and Lady Eleanor would not elude Hercule Poirot. The chapter closed with the detective standing at his window, gazing out at the rain-soaked grounds of Marwood Manor. The locket rested heavy in his pocket, its message a silent challenge. Somewhere in this house, a killer lurked, and Poirot's little gray cells were already at work, weaving the threads of truth into a tapestry that would reveal all. Chapter 3. The locket's secret. The morning at Marwood Manor dawned with a deceptive calm, a kind that cloaks a storm in its quiet folds. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in his tailored suit, stood by the tall windows of the manor's drawing room, his sharp eyes scanning the mist-shrouded gardens beyond. The events of the previous night, the vanishing of the mysterious Clarence Vane, the blood-stained napkin, and the discovery of the torn photograph in Vane's abandoned coat had set his little gray cells into a feverish whirl. Now, in his hand, he held a new piece of the puzzle, a locket, small and silver, found clutched in the unconscious maid Clara's hand. Its surface was engraved with the initials E.M., and within it a cryptic message: E.M. lives. Poirot turned the locket over, his gloved fingers tracing its delicate filigree. The manor was silent save for the distant clatter of breakfast preparations, but the air thrummed with secrets. Clara, now recovered, sat nervously on a velvet settee, her hands twisting in her apron. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, hovered nearby, his brow furrowed with concern. The locket, Poirot knew, was no mere trinket. It was a key, and he intended to unlock its secrets before the day was out. Mon ami, Poirot said, addressing Clara with a gentle but probing tone. You say you found this locket in Monsieur Vane's room before you fainted. Precisement. Where in the room was it? Clara's pale cheeks flushed, and her eyes darted to the floor. I was tidying, sir. It was on the dresser, half hidden under a book. I picked it up to move it, and that's when I saw the writing inside. It frightened me, sir. I don't know why, but I felt a chill, like someone was watching. Then everything went dark. Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his skepticism. A chill, you say? Tiens, that is most interesting. And this book, under which the locket lay, what was it? Clara hesitated, her fingers nodding. Tighter. A Bible, sir. Old, with a cracked leather cover. I didn't open it. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who raised an eyebrow. A Bible, Hastings murmured. Odd place to hide a locket, don't you think, Poirot? Oui, Hastings, Poirot replied, his voice low. The choice of hiding place is never without purpose. Come, let us visit this room of Monsieur Vane. There is much to learn. The guest wing of Marwood Manor was a labyrinth of polished oak and heavy drapes, each corridor whispering of the estate's storied past. Vane's room, at the far end, was modest compared to the manor's opulence: a single bed, a dresser, a wardrobe, and a small writing desk by a window overlooking the rose garden. The air carried the faint scent of tobacco and something sharper, almost metallic. Poirot moved with deliberate grace, his eyes sweeping the room like a painter assessing a canvas. He approached the dresser, where Clara claimed to have found the locket. The Bible was still there, its leather cover worn to a dull sheen. Poirot lifted it carefully, revealing a faint indentation in the wood beneath, as if something heavier than a locket had rested there. Regardus, Hastings, Poirot said, pointing to the mark. This is not the work of a locket alone. Something else was here, something of weight. Hastings leaned closer, squinting. A box, perhaps, or a case. Pa hater, Poirot mused. He opened the Bible, flipping through its pages with care. A single sheet of paper slipped out, yellowed, and brittle, folded tightly. Poirot unfolded it, revealing a series of numbers scrawled in black ink. 127194222. Below them, in the same hand, was a single word, Veritas. Truth, Poirot translated, his eyes gleaming. Mon Dieu, this Monsieur Vane was no ordinary guest. He was a man with a purpose. Hastings frowned. A code, Poirot? What does it mean? That, my friend, we shall discover. But first, we must speak with Lord Marwood. The locket, the message, this code all point to a past he may wish to keep buried. Lord Reginald Marwood received them in his study, a cavernous room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a mahogany desk. The Lord himself, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and a face etched with the weight of his title, sat rigidly in a high-backed chair. His eyes, sharp but guarded, followed Poirot as the detective entered, the locket dangling from his fingers. "Poirot," Marwood said, his voice smooth but tinged with unease, "I trust you've made progress in this unfortunate matter with Mr. Vane?" "Oui, my lord," Poirot replied, placing the locket on the desk. "This was found in his room by the maid, Clara. It bears the initials E.M. and a most curious inscription. E.M. lives. I understand this may refer to your late wife, Lady Eleanor Marwood. N'est-ce pas?" Marwood's jaw tightened, and for a moment his composure faltered. "Eleanor has been dead for 20 years, Poirot. That locket is a family heirloom, nothing more. Some servant must have misplaced it." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze unwavering. "A heirloom, you say? Yet it was found in the room of a man who vanished under most mysterious circumstances. And this," he produced the folded paper with the coded numbers. "This was hidden in a Bible, also in Monsieur Vane's possession. Do you recognize these numbers, my lord?" Marwood's eyes flicked to the paper, then away. "I do not. This is nonsense, Poirot. Vane was a stranger, a guest invited on a whim. I know nothing of his affairs. Vraiment?" Poirot's tone was polite but edged with steel. "Then perhaps you can explain why a man you claim to barely know was in possession of a locket tied to your late wife, and a code that suggests a deeper investigation into her death." Marwood stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You overstep, Poirot. Eleanor's death was a tragedy, an accident. I will not have her memory dragged through the mud by your insinuations." Poirot raised a placating hand. "Calmez-vous. My lord, I seek only the truth. If you know nothing of these matters, then I must look elsewhere. But the truth, it has a way of revealing itself, non?" As they left the study, Hastings whispered, "He's hiding something, Poirot. Did you see his face when you mentioned Eleanor?" "Oui, Hastings," Poirot replied, his voice barely above a murmur. "The lord of the manor is a man with secrets. But the locket and the code, they are but the beginning. We must search Vane's room once more. There is more to find, I am certain." Back in Vane's room, Poirot's meticulous nature took over. He examined every inch of the space, tapping walls, lifting floorboards, and inspecting the wardrobe seams. Hastings, ever eager to assist, rifled through the desk drawers, finding only a few stray pens and a half-used candle. But Poirot's attention was drawn to the wardrobe's back panel, where a faint scratch mark caught the light. "Tiens," he murmured, pressing his fingers against the wood. A soft click echoed, and the panel slid aside, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside was a small leather pouch, its contents rattling softly. Poirot opened it, revealing a collection of documents, forged passports, a letter of introduction under a false name, and a single sheet of vellum with a wax seal, broken but intact, bearing the Marwood crest. "Mon Dieu," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing as he examined the documents. Monsieur Vane was not who he claimed to be. These passports, 3 different names, all with his photograph. He was a man of many faces. Hastings peered over his shoulder. A spy, perhaps, or a private investigator? Pater, Poirot said, unfolding the vellum. The text was brief but damning. To whom it may concern, Clarence Vane is authorized to investigate matters pertaining to the Marwood estate, with particular attention to the events of July 1905. The signature was illegible, but the seal was unmistakable. July 1905, Hastings said, his voice hushed. That's when Lady Eleanor died. Exactement, Poirot replied. Vane was here to uncover the truth about her death. But who sent him? And why now, after 20 years? The documents offered no immediate answers, but the forged passports suggested Vane had enemies, or at least reasons to hide his true identity. Poirot tucked the pouch into his coat, his mind racing. The locket's message, "Im lives," could not be literal. Eleanor was long dead. But it hinted at a truth preserved, a secret someone was desperate to protect or expose. As evening fell, Poirot and Hastings retired to the drawing-room, where a fire crackled in the hearth. The Manor's other guests, Lady Beatrice, Lord Marwood's sharp-tongued sister, Dr. Harold Finch, a family friend with a penchant for brandy, and Miss Evelyn Carter, the young journalist who had arrived uninvited, gathered for drinks. The atmosphere was tense, each guest eyeing the others with veiled suspicion. Poirot, ever observant, noted the way Lady Beatrice's fingers tightened around her glass when Eleanor's name was mentioned in passing. Dr. Finch, meanwhile, seemed overly eager to change the subject, launching into a rambling anecdote about his medical practice. Only Evelyn Carter remained silent, her eyes fixed on Poirot as if gauging his next move. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot said, rising to his feet, the locket gleaming in his hand, "I have a question for you all. This locket, found in Monsieur Vane's room, bears the initials E.M., and a message that suggests Lady Eleanor Marwood's death is not what it seems. Does anyone know of its significance?" The room fell silent. Lady Beatrice's glass trembled slightly, and Dr. Finch coughed into his handkerchief. Evelyn Carter leaned forward, her journalist's instincts clearly piqued. "Eleanor Marwood?" she said. "The papers said she fell from a balcony." "An accident, wasn't it?" "Pater," Poirot said, his eyes never leaving the group. "But accidents, they are often convenient, non? I wonder if anyone here knows more than they have shared." Lord Marwood, who had just entered, froze in the doorway. "Poirot, this is outrageous. You're turning my home into a circus." "None, my lord," Poirot said smoothly. "I am merely seeking the truth. And the truth is like a fine wine. It improves with time, but only if one knows where to look." The tension was broken by a sudden crash from upstairs, followed by a muffled cry. Hastings leapt to his feet, and Poirot was already moving toward the door. "Vite, Hastings," he called. "The Manor, it seems, has more secrets to share." They raced to the guest wing, where the sound had originated. Clara stood in the hallway, her face ashen, pointing to Vane's room. "It was there, sir. I heard it a scraping, like something moving." Poirot entered the room, his senses alert. The wardrobe's secret compartment was open, its contents untouched, but the window was ajar, letting in a cold draught. On the floor, barely visible in the dim light, was a single rose petal, its edges curling as if freshly plucked. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, picking up the petal. "Someone was here, Hastings. Someone who knows we are close to the truth." As they searched the room, Poirot's mind pieced together the fragments of the puzzle. The locket, the code, the forged documents, the rose petal, all pointed to a conspiracy rooted in Eleanor's death. Vane had been no casual guest. He was a hunter of secrets, and someone in the Manor had silenced him. But who? And why did the locket proclaim that E.M. lives? The chapter closed with Poirot standing by the window, the rose petal in his hand, his eyes fixed on the darkened gardens below. The mystery was deepening, but Hercule Poirot was undaunted. The truth, he knew, was within his grasp, and he would not rest until it was revealed. Chapter 4. Whispers from the Village. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills surrounding Marwood Manor, curling like ghostly fingers around the ancient oaks that lined the path to the village of Thornwick. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed, despite the damp chill, adjusted his Homburg hat and set out on foot, his polished shoes clicking rhythmically against the cobblestone lane. The revelations of the previous night, the locket, the coded message E.M. Lives, and the forged documents found in Clarence Vane's room had stirred his little gray cells into a frenzy. The manor, with its opulent yet oppressive air, was a puzzle box, and Poirot sensed the key to its secrets lay beyond its iron gates. In the village, where whispers of the past still lingered, the road to Thornwick was a winding affair, flanked by hedgerows bursting with late summer blackberries and the occasional dart of a rabbit into the underbrush. Poirot's mind, however, was far from the pastoral charm. The cryptic message in the locket gnawed at him. Eam lives. Could Eleanor Marwood, dead these 20 years, truly be alive? Or was the message a taunt, a clue to some deeper deception? The forged documents suggested Vane had been no mere guest, but a man with a purpose, perhaps tied to Eleanor's mysterious demise. Poirot's mustache twitched as he considered the possibilities, his steps quickening with purpose. Thornwick appeared as the mist began to lift, a quaint cluster of stone cottages with thatched roofs, their chimneys puffing lazy streams of smoke. Into the pale sky, the village square was modest but lively, with a butcher's shop displaying glistening cuts of meat, a bakery wafting the scent of fresh bread, and a small post office where a queue of locals chatted animatedly. At the center stood a weathered stone fountain, its basin green with moss, topped by a statue of a shepherd boy, his flute forever silent. Poirot paused, taking in the scene. Villages, he knew, were the beating hearts of secrets, their residents the keepers of truths too dangerous for manor walls. His first stop was the village pub, the Blackthorn Inn, a low-beamed establishment, with ivy crawling up its walls. The sign above the door creaked in the breeze, depicting a thorny branch entwined around a tankard. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of ale and wood smoke. A handful of patrons, farmers in rough tweeds. A postman nursing a pint glanced up as Poirot entered, their conversations faltering. He was an outsider, and his meticulous appearance, from his patent leather shoes to his neatly waxed mustache, marked him as such. "Good morning, messieurs," Poirot said, his voice carrying a deliberate warmth as he removed his hat. "I am Hercule Poirot, a guest at Marwood Manor. I seek information about a matter most delicate." The barkeep, a burly man with a grizzled beard and eyes like chipped flint, wiped a glass with a rag that had seen better days. "Marwood Manor, eh? What's old Reggie got you poking into, then?" His tone was gruff but curious, and Poirot noted the familiarity with which he spoke of Lord Marwood. "A matter of history," Poirot replied smoothly, seating himself at the bar. "I am told the village holds stories of Lady Eleanor Marwood, whose passing was, perhaps, not as simple as it seemed." The room grew quieter, the clink of glasses and murmur of voices fading. A farmer at a nearby table coughed into his ale, and the postman's eyes darted to the barkeep, who set the glass down with a thud. "Eleanor Marwood," the barkeep said, his voice low. "That's a name not spoken lightly here. What's your interest in her?" Poirot leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "A guest at the manor has vanished, monsieur. A man named Clarence Vane. I believe his disappearance may be connected to Lady Eleanor's story. I seek only the truth, and I am told the village remembers what the manor forgets." The barkeep's gaze softened, though suspicion lingered. Name's Tom Harrow. Been running this place 30 years. I was a lad when Lady Eleanor died. Tragic. It was. Fell from the cliffs near the manor, they said. An accident. He paused, his rags stilling. But folks here never quite believed that. Poirot's interest piqued. And why is that, Monsieur Harrow? Harrow leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Eleanor was a bright one, full of life. Loved the village, she did. Used to come down here, play cards with the lads, sing with the women at the harvest fair. Not like the rest of the Marwoods, all high and mighty. Some say she was too lively for her own good. Too many secrets. Secrets? Poirot's tone was gentle, encouraging. Harrow glanced around, ensuring no one was too close. There was talk of a man. Not Lord Reginald, mind you. Someone else. A groundskeeper, Thomas Reed. Folks saw them together, late at night, by the old well on the manor grounds. Then, after she died, Reed up and vanished, never seen again. Poirot's mind raced. Thomas Reed, the initials TR. In the letters. Found in Vane's room. The pieces were beginning to align. This Thomas Reed, he said. What became of him? And what did the village believe about Lady Eleanor's death? Harrow shrugged, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Some say Reed killed her, out of jealousy or some lover's spat. Others say Lord Marwood did it, to keep her from running off with Reed. The constable back then, old Jim Carver, looked into it, but the Marwoods shut it down quick. Money talks, you know. If you want more, you'd best talk to Carver. He's retired now, lives at the edge of the village. Gray cottage, red door. Can't miss it. Poirot nodded, slipping. A coin across the bar. Merci, Monsieur Harrow. You have been most helpful. As he stepped back into the square, the mist had fully lifted, revealing a sky of pale blue streaked with wispy clouds. The village buzzed with morning activity, but Poirot's focus was singular. Jim Carver, the retired constable, might hold the key to unlocking the truth about Eleanor's death, and by extension, Vane's disappearance. He made his way to the edge of Thornwick, where the cottages grew sparser, and the land opened to fields dotted with grazing sheep. The gray cottage with the red door stood alone, its garden overgrown with wildflowers and nettles. Poirot knocked, and after a moment the door creaked open to reveal a man in his late 60s, his face weathered like old leather, his eyes sharp despite the years. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice gruff, but not unkind. "Hercule Poirot, monsieur. I am investigating a matter at Marwood Manor concerning Lady Eleanor Marwood and a man named Clarence Vane. I am told you may have insights into the events of 20 years ago." Carver's eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside. "Come in, then. Mind the clutter." The cottage was small, its interior a chaotic blend of old newspapers, books, and fishing tackle. Carver gestured to a warm armchair by a smoldering fire. "Sit. I'll tell you what I know, but it ain't much, and it ain't pleasant." Poirot settled into the chair, his posture as precise as ever. "I seek only the truth, Monsieur Carver. What can you tell me of Lady Eleanor's death?" Carver eased into a chair opposite, his hands clasped tightly. "I was constable when it happened. Eleanor Marwood was found at the base of the cliffs, her body broken. They said she slipped out walking alone at night, but I never bought it. She wasn't the sort to wander cliffs in the dark. Too sharp for that. And there were bruises on her arms, like someone grabbed her hard. I wanted to investigate, but Lord Marwood's lawyers swooped in. Case closed before it began." "And Thomas Reed?" Poirot prompted. Carver's jaw tightened. Reed was a good man. Worked the manor grounds, kept to himself. But he and Eleanor were close, too close, some said. After she died, He was gone within days. No note, no trace. I tried to find him, thinking he might know something, but it was like he vanished into thin air. I always wondered if he saw something that night, or if he was silenced. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Silenced, you say? By whom? Carver hesitated, his gaze flickering to the window. Can't say for sure, but the Marwoods had power. Still, if Reed knew something, he'd have been a threat. And now you're asking about this Vane fellow. Another disappearance, eh? Sounds like the Manor's got a habit of making people vanish. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. Monsieur Carver, did you keep any records of your investigation? Anything that might shed light on these events? Carver's lips twitched into a wry smile. You're a sharp one, aren't you? I kept a few things, old habit. Wait. Here. He shuffled to a corner of the room, where a battered trunk sat beneath a pile of blankets. After rummaging for a moment, he produced a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and edges frayed. This was mine back then. Wrote down. Everything I couldn't put in the official report. Take it. Might be something in there. Poirot accepted the journal, his fingers brushing the worn cover. Merci, Monsieur Carver. This may be most valuable. As he left the cottage, journal tucked securely under his arm, Poirot felt the weight of the past pressing against him. The village had given him more than whispers. It had given him a name, Thomas Reed, and a suspicion of murder that refused to die. The journal, he hoped, would provide the next piece of the puzzle dot back in the village square. Poirot paused to examine the journal. Its pages were filled with Carver's cramped handwriting, detailing his observations of the night Eleanor died. One entry caught his eye. October 12, 1905. Found a scarf near the cliffs, torn and stained with mud. Not Eleanor's too coarse. Reed's, maybe? Marwood's men took it before I could log it. Another entry, dated days later. Reed, missing. Servants say he was asking questions about Eleanor's death. Heard him arguing with someone in the manor gardens, night before he vanished. Couldn't see who. Poirot closed the journal, his mind alight with possibilities. The scarf, the argument, Reed's disappearance all pointed to a cover-up, one that Vane had perhaps stumbled upon. But why now, 20 years later? And who was Vane, really, to dig into such dangerous secrets? As he made his way back to the manor, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows across the fields, Poirot noticed a figure watching him from the edge of the square. It was a woman, her face half hidden by a shawl, her posture tense. She turned and vanished into an alley before he could approach, but her presence lingered in his mind, a new thread in the tapestry of intrigue by the time he reached Marwood Manor. The sky was ablaze with the colors of sunset, and the great house loomed like a sentinel against the horizon. Poirot clutched the journal tightly, his resolve hardening. The whispers of Thornwick had given him a trail to follow, and he would confront Lord Marwood with the truths it revealed. The mystery of Clarence Vane and of Eleanor Marwood was far from solved, but Poirot felt the pieces drawing closer, the pattern emerging. He would return to the manor, journal in hand, ready to unravel the next layer of secrets. Chapter 5. The Midnight Intruder. The moon hung low over Marwood Manor, its silver light casting eerie shadows across the sprawling estate. The night was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves stirred by a restless wind. Hercule Poirot, clad in his meticulously pressed dressing gown, stood at the window of his guest room, his sharp eyes scanning the darkened grounds below. Sleep eluded him, not out of discomfort, though the manor's antique. Beds were hardly conducive to rest, but because his mind buzzed with the enigma of Clarence Vane's disappearance. The blood-stained napkin, the torn photograph, and the locket with its cryptic message, "E.M. lives? danced in his thoughts like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle scattered across a table, each begging to be fitted into place. Poirot's reflections were interrupted by a faint creak from the corridor outside his room. His head tilted slightly, his mustache twitching as his senses sharpened. The sound was not the groan of an old house settling, but the deliberate tread of someone attempting stealth. He moved swiftly to the door, his small frame belying the agility with which he turned the handle and peered into the dimly lit hallway. The corridor was empty, save for the flickering shadows cast by a single sconce. Yet the air carried a trace of disturbance, as if someone had passed through moments before. With the precision of a cat, Poirot slipped into the hallway, his polished shoes silent on the thick Persian runner. He followed the faintest hint of sound, a muffled thump toward the grand staircase that spiraled down to the manor's heart. The trail led him to the study of Lord Reginald Marwood, a room he had noted earlier for its imposing mahogany desk and shelves laden with leather-bound tomes. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of lamplight spilling into the corridor. Poirot pressed himself against the wall, his ear attuned to the soft rustle of papers within. He eased the door open, just enough to glimpse the intruder, a young woman no older than 30, with auburn hair pinned haphazardly under a dark cap. She moved with nervous energy, rifling through a drawer with gloved hands. Her attire a practical blouse and skirt, both dark to blend with the night suggested purpose rather than elegance. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Mon Dieu, he thought, an amateur, but a bold one. He stepped into the room, clearing his throat with theatrical precision. The woman spun around, her green eyes wide with alarm, a sheaf of papers clutched to her chest. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice low but sharp, like a blade unsheathed. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot," he replied, bowing slightly, his tone as smooth as polished glass. "And you, mademoiselle, are trespassing in the study of Lord Marwood at an hour most unsuitable for casual visits. May I inquire as to your purpose?" The woman's expression flickered between defiance and panic. She straightened, attempting to regain composure. "I'm Evelyn Carter," she said, her voice steadying. "I'm a journalist, and I'm here because of Clarence Vane." Poirot's eyebrows arched. Vraiment? The mysterious Messieurs Vane, who vanishes during dinner and leaves behind a trail of blood and secrets. You know him, then? Evelyn hesitated, her gaze darting to the door as if calculating her escape. Poirot stepped forward, positioning himself between her and the exit, his demeanor calm but unyielding. "Mademoiselle Carter, you will find that fleeing from Hercule Poirot is a most futile endeavor. I suggest you explain yourself." "The truth, if you please," she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Fine. Vane was my source. I work for the Clarion, a London scandal sheet. He contacted me weeks ago, claiming he had evidence of a dark secret buried in the Marwood family. Something about a death years ago that wasn't what it seemed. He promised me documents, proof something big enough to ruin Lord Marwood." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. "And these documents, they are what you seek tonight?" She nodded, setting the papers on the desk with a reluctant thud. "Vane said they were here, in the study. He was supposed to meet me the night he disappeared, but he never showed. I thought, if I could find the papers myself, I could figure out what happened to him." Poirot picked up one of the sheets she'd been examining, a ledger of household expenses, unremarkable at first glance. "Then did Monsieur Vane specify what this dark secret might be?" Evelyn shook her head. "He was cagey, said it was too dangerous to discuss until he had everything in hand. All he mentioned was a name, Eleanor, and something about a hidden safe." The mention of Eleanor sent a jolt through Poirot's mind, connecting to the lockets, inscription, and the torn photograph of a woman resembling Lady Eleanor Marwood. He kept his expression neutral, though his thoughts raced. A safe, you say? Most intriguing. And where, pray, did Monsieur Vane suggest this safe might be? Evelyn gestured toward a large oil painting of a hunting scene that dominated one wall. He said it was behind a false panel, but I haven't found it yet. I've been through half the drawers in this blasted desk, and nothing. Poirot's gaze settled on the painting, its heavy gilt frame slightly askew, as if recently disturbed. He approached it, running his fingers along the edge where the frame met the paneling. His touch was light, methodical, seeking the subtle imperfections that betrayed a hidden mechanism. A faint click rewarded his efforts, and a section of the paneling swung inward, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. Evelyn gasped, stepping closer. You found it. How did you— Patience, mademoiselle, and the observation of details, Poirot said, his tone carrying a hint of pride. The frame was not aligned with the precision one expects in a matter such as this. A small matter, but to Poirot, it speaks volumes. He examined the safe, its lock a sturdy combination dial, its surface scratched as if someone had recently attempted to force it open. Hellas, it is locked, and I am no safecracker. At these marks, they are fresh. Someone else has been here, perhaps Monsieur Vane himself, or another who shares his curiosity. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Or someone who wanted to keep him. Quiet. If Vane found something in that safe, it could explain why he vanished. Precisement, Poirot agreed. But we must proceed with care. The manor is full of eyes and ears, and not all are friendly. Mademoiselle, I will require your notes everything Monsieur Vane told you. Evelyn hesitated, then reached into her satchel and produced a small notebook, its pages filled with hurried scrawl. This is everything. His letters, his hints, even a sketch he sent me of the manor's layout. But I want to stay in on this, Mr. Poirot. If there's a story here, it's mine. Poirot took the notebook, flipping through it with a practiced eye. The sketches were crude but detailed, marking key rooms and a curious annotation near the study. Safe behind the hunt. Vane's letters were cryptic, filled with veiled references to E.M., and a truth buried in stone. Poirot's mustache twitched as he closed the notebook. You may assist, mademoiselle, but only under my direction. The pursuit of truth is not a game for amateurs, and danger lurks where secrets are kept. Before Evelyn could respond, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Poirot's hand shot up, silencing her. He moved to the door, peering out to see a vase lying in pieces on the floor, its shards glinting. In the lamplight, the corridor was empty, but the air felt charged, as if someone had fled just out of sight. Someone watches us, Poirot murmured, his voice low. We must be swift. Mademoiselle, you will return to your lodgings in the Asima village. I will keep your notebook for now. Tomorrow we shall meet again, and you will tell me all you know of Monsieur Vane's movements. Evelyn nodded, though her expression was reluctant. All right, but don't cut me out, Mr. Poirot. I'm not just some hack looking for a headline. Vane was my friend. Poirot's gaze softened slightly. Your loyalty is noted, mademoiselle. But loyalty without caution leads to peril. Go now, and speak of this to no one. As Evelyn slipped out through a side door, Poirot returned to the study, his mind alight with new questions. The safe, with its tampered lock, was a beacon in the mystery, but the crash in the hallway suggested they were not alone in their pursuit. He knelt by the shattered vase, examining a shard with a curious mark, a faint smear of red, not unlike the blood on Vane's napkin. Curio, he thought. The plot, it thickens. He returned to the safe, memorizing its position and the scratches. On its surface, without the combination, it remained a locked vault of secrets, but Poirot was undeterred. The notebook, the safe, and now this mysterious watcher in the night, They were threads in a tapestry he would soon unravel. As he retired to his room, the manor seemed to pulse with secrets, each shadow hiding a clue, each silence whispering a challenge to his little gray cells. The night deepened, and Poirot lay awake, his mind constructing a web of connections. Evelyn Carter's intrusion had confirmed Vane's investigation was no idle fancy, and the safe held answers, if only he could open it. Tomorrow he would summon Captain Hastings, whose practical skills might complement Poirot's deductive brilliance. For now he closed his eyes. The image of the safe's scratched surface burned into his memory, a silent promise of revelations to come. The next morning, Marwood Manor buzzed with the subdued chaos of a household pretending normalcy. Breakfast was served in the grand dining room, where Lord Marwood presided with his usual air of aristocratic detachment. His sister, Lady Beatrice, sipped her tea with a tight smile, while the other guests' local gentry and distant cousins made polite conversation that barely masked their unease. The absence of Clarence Vane hung over the table like a spectre, though no one mentioned it directly. Poirot, seated near the head of the table, observed the room with his usual meticulousness. He noted the butler, Mr. Grayson, whose hands trembled slightly as he poured coffee, and the maid, Clara, who avoided Poirot's gaze as she cleared plates. The locket incident still lingered in his mind, and he wondered if Clara's fright had been genuine or a performance to deflect suspicion. Captain Hastings joined him after breakfast, his face flushed from a brisk morning walk. "I say, Poirot, this place gives me the creeps. All these old portraits staring down at you, and that business with Vane makes a chap jumpy." "Mon ami, you must calm your nerves," Poirot replied, leading Hastings to a quiet corner of the library. "The manor is indeed full of secrets, but it is the human heart that hides the most. Last night I encountered an intruder, a Mademoiselle Evelyn Carter, a journalist with connections to our missing guest." Hastings's eyes widened. "A journalist? Good Lord, Poirot, this is getting murkier by the minute. What was she after?" Poirot produced Evelyn's notebook, handing it to Hastings. "She seeks documents that Monsieur Vane believed would expose a scandal in the Marwood family. And she led me to discover a hidden safe in Lord Marwood's study, behind a painting. It has been tampered with, but not opened. I require your assistance, Hastings. Your practical mind may help us access its contents." Hastings puffed out his chest, clearly pleased to be needed. "Righto, Poirot. I'm no expert at cracking safes, but I've got a few tricks up my sleeve from my army days. What's the plan?" "We shall return to the study this afternoon, when the household is distracted by luncheon," Poirot said. "But we must be discreet. Someone in this manor is watching, and they are not pleased with our inquiries." The morning passed in a flurry of interviews. Poirot questioned the butler, Mr. Grayson, who claimed ignorance of Vane's activities, but seemed overly eager to change the subject. Clara, the maid, reiterated her story about finding the locket, though her eyes darted nervously to the door. Lord Marwood himself was courteous but dismissive, insisting Vane was likely a fraud who'd fled after some petty theft. Yet Poirot sensed a tension in Marwood's polished demeanor, a crack in the facade of aristocratic calm. By noon, the manor's residents dispersed to the dining room, leaving the study unguarded. Poirot and Hastings slipped inside, closing the door behind them. The painting still hung slightly askew, and Poirot gestured to the safe. "Voila, Hastings. Our treasure chest, locked and defiant. What can you do with it?" Hastings examined the safe, running his fingers over the scratches. "Looks like someone tried to force it with a crude tool, probably in a hurry. The lock's a combination type, standard but sturdy. I could try listening for the tumblers, but it'll take time." "Then time we shall give you," Poirot said, positioning himself by the door to keep watch. "But hurry, mon ami. The manor has ears." Hastings knelt by the safe, his ear pressed to the metal as he turned the dial with delicate precision. Minutes ticked by, the only sound the faint click of the mechanism and the distant clatter of dishes from the dining room. Poirot's gaze flicked between the door and Hastings, his mind racing through the possibilities. If the safe held Vane's evidence, it could point to Eleanor's fate, and perhaps Vane's own. A sudden flicker of light caught Poirot's attention. The lamp on the desk dimmed, then surged, plunging the room into darkness. Hastings cursed under his breath. "Blast it, Poirot, the power's gone out." "Calm toy, Hastings," Poirot whispered, his voice steady despite the sudden tension. "This is no accident. Stay where you are." He moved to the window, peering out to see if the outage affected the entire manor. The grounds were dark, save for the faint glow of moonlight. A soft creak came from the hallway, and Poirot's hand tightened on his cane. "Someone approaches," he murmured out before he could act. The door burst open, and a figure loomed in the darkness. Poirot's eyes adjusted just enough to make out a silhouette tall, cloaked, and holding something that glinted in the moonlight. "Stay back," the figure hissed, their voice muffled, but unmistakably threatening. Poirot raised his hands, his tone calm but commanding. "Monsieur, or perhaps Madame, you have chosen a poor moment to interrupt Hercule Poirot. Reveal yourself, and we may discuss this like civilized beings." The figure hesitated, then bolted, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Hastings scrambled to his feet, ready to give chase, but Poirot held him back. "No, mon ami. Let them run. They have confirmed what I suspected. Someone in this manner is desperate to keep that safe locked." As the power flickered back on, Poirot and Hastings exchanged a glance. The safe remained unopened, its secrets intact, but the encounter had shifted the game. Poirot's mind buzzed with new connections. Evelyn's notebook, the tampered safe, the bloodied shard in the hallway, and now this cloaked figure. The Marwood legacy was a house of cards, and someone was determined to keep it standing. "We will return to this safe, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice resolute. "But first, we must find Mademoiselle Carter again. She knows more than she has shared, and I suspect she is in danger. The truth, it is close, but it is guarded by shadows." As they left the study, the manor seemed to close in around them, its walls whispering of secrets long buried. Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle of Clarence Vane's disappearance and the specter of Eleanor Marwood's death. The night's events had brought them closer to the truth, but the path ahead was fraught with peril, and Poirot knew the next move would require all his cunning. Chapter 6. The Safe's Revelation. The heavy oak door of Lord Marwood's study creaked shut behind Hercule Poirot, sealing him and Captain Hastings into the dimly lit room. The air was thick with the scent of old leather and polished wood, the kind of room that whispered secrets in every shadow. A single lamp cast a golden glow over the desk, its light catching the edges of a portrait above the fireplace. A stern-faced Lord Reginald Marwood, his eyes seeming to follow their every move. Poirot's mustache twitched as he surveyed the space, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Mon ami," Poirot said, turning to Hastings with a gleam in his eye. "This study, it is the heart of Marwood Manor, non? And the heart, it always holds the truth, if one knows where to look." Hastings, ever the loyal companion, nodded, though his brow furrowed with uncertainty. "I say, Poirot, do you really think that safe Evelyn Carter mentioned is the key to this vain fellow's disappearance? Seems a bit cloak and dagger, even for a place like this." Poirot's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Cloak and dagger, Hastings? Perhaps, but the truth, it often hides behind the most theatrical of curtains. Come, let us find this safe." The study was a labyrinth of opulence, shelves lined with leather-bound tomes, a crystal decanter glinting on a sideboard, and a massive mahogany desk that dominated the room like a throne. Poirot's eyes darted to the fireplace, where Evelyn, Carter's confiscated notes, had hinted at a false panel. He paced the room with the precision of a cat, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug. Hastings followed, his taller frame casting a lanky shadow across the wall. There! Poirot's finger pointed to a section of the wood-paneled wall beside the fireplace. A faint seam, almost invisible to the untrained eye, betrayed the presence of a hidden compartment. He pressed his gloved hand against the panel, feeling for a mechanism. A soft click echoed in the quiet room, and the panel slid open to reveal a steel safe embedded in the wall. Its lock was a formidable combination dial, its surface scratched from recent tampering. Hastings let out a low whistle. Well, I'll be dashed. She was right. But how do we get into it? I'm no cracksman, and I dare say you're not either. Poirot's eyes sparkled with mischief. Patience, Hastings. The mind of Hercule Poirot is a tool far sharper than any thief's pick. But first, we must understand the man who guards this safe Lord Marwood. His secrets, they are locked not only in steel, but in his character. Poirot stepped back, his hands clasped behind him, and began to muse aloud. Lord Marwood, he is a man of pride, non? A man who values order, tradition, control. Such a man would choose a combination that is meaningful to him, yet not easily guessed. A date, perhaps, or a number tied to his legacy. Hastings frowned, scratching his chin. A date? His birthday, maybe? Or the year the manor was built? Possible, but too simple, Poirot replied, his voice low and thoughtful. No, it will be something personal, something that defines him. Let us consider. The Marwood family, they have a history of tragedy. The death of Lady Eleanor, 20 years ago, perhaps. He trailed off, his fingers hovering over the dial. Poirot's memory flickered to the locket found in Clara's hand. Its cryptic inscription, E.M. Lives. Eleanor Marwood's death had been ruled an accident, but the rumors, the forged documents in Vane's room, and now Evelyn Carter's investigation suggested otherwise. Could the combination be tied to Eleanor? He tested the idea, murmuring to himself as he turned the dial. The year of her death, 1905. He spun the dial 10905. A faint click, but the safe remained locked. Poirot's brow furrowed, his mind racing. Not the year alone. Perhaps a more specific date. The day of her death, it was. He paused, recalling the village gossip from his earlier inquiries. October 12th, 1905. He tried again, entering 101-21905. The safe gave a satisfying thunk, and the door swung open. Hastings gasped, his eyes wide. Good heavens, Poirot, you've done it. Poirot's smile was modest, but his eyes gleamed with triumph. The little gray cells, Hastings, they never fail me. Inside the safe lay a small bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon, a velvet pouch, and a single photograph, its edges curling with age. Poirot carefully extracted the letters, his gloved fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon. The envelopes bore no names, only a looping, elegant script that read, "My heart." Hastings leaned over his shoulder, his curiosity palpable. "Love letters, by Jove," Hastings exclaimed. "Do you think they're from Lord Marwood to someone?" Poirot untied the ribbon and scanned the first letter. His eyes narrowed as he read aloud. "My dearest, the world would not understand our love, but I will defy it for you. Meet me at the well at midnight. Yours forever, T.R.?" Hastings echoed, his voice tinged with excitement. "Thomas Reed, the groundskeeper? The one the village constable mentioned?" "Precisement," Poirot said, his tone grave. "These letters, they are not from Lord Marwood, but to Lady Eleanor from her lover, Thomas Reed. This suggests a motive, perhaps for her death. Jealousy, betrayal, these are the seeds of murder. He opened another letter, this one dated just days before Eleanor's death. It read, "Eleanor, my love, we must leave this place. Reginald suspects us. I fear for your safety. Meet me at the well, and we shall flee together." Poirot's voice softened, tinged with sadness. "She never made it to that meeting, Hastings. She fell or was pushed from the balcony that very night." Hastings's face darkened. "You think Lord Marwood killed her? Out of jealousy?" "It is possible," Poirot replied, slipping the letters into his pocket. "But we must not leap to conclusions. The truth, it is like a mosaic, each piece must fit perfectly." He turned his attention to the velvet pouch, tipping its contents into his palm. A single key, small and ornate, glinted in the lamplight. Its head was engraved with a tiny rose, a symbol Poirot recognized from the manor's decor. "This key," he murmured. "It opens something within the manor, a door, a chest, perhaps a secret." The photograph was next, a faded image of a young woman, Eleanor, unmistakably, her dark eyes bright with life. Beside her stood a man, his face partially torn away, but his build and the rough workman's clothes suggested Thomas Reed. Poirot's fingers traced the tear, his mind racing. Someone wished to erase this man from memory. But why? Before Hastings could respond, the room plunged into darkness. The lamp flickered and died, and a sudden chill swept through the study. Hastings let out a startled yelp. "Poirot, what's happened?" "Kong toy, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice steady despite the sudden blackness. "A power outage, nothing more. But the timing, it is most convenient, non?" He reached for his pocket watch, its luminous hands glowing faintly, and checked. The time? Just past 11. The manor was silent, save for the distant creak of floorboards. Poirot's senses sharpened, his ears straining for any sign of movement. "Stay close, Hastings. We are not alone." Hastings fumbled in his pocket, producing a small torch. Its beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the study in stark relief. The safe stood open, its contents now safely in Poirot's possession. But the air felt heavier, as if the room itself were holding its breath. Poirot moved toward the door, his hand on the knob, when a soft thud came from the other side. "Someone is there," Poirot whispered, gesturing for Hastings to douse the torch. They stood in silence, the only sound their measured breathing. Then a faint scratching, like nails on wood, echoed from the hallway. Poirot's hand tightened on the knob, and with a swift motion, he yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but a faint breeze carried the scent of lavender, a perfume Poirot recognized from Lady Beatrice, Lord Marwood's sister. He stepped into the corridor, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Hastings, the torch, vite!" Hastings flicked it on, revealing a single lavender-scented glove lying on the floor, its delicate lace torn. Poirot picked it up, his expression unreadable. Lady Beatrice, she was here. But why? To spy? To steal? Or to warn? Before they could ponder further, a distant crash echoed through the manor, followed by a woman's scream. Hastings's face paled. "That's Clara, the maid." "She's in trouble." Poirot's mind raced. Clara, who had found the locket. Clara, who had been in Vane's room. Clara, who might know more than she let on. "Come, Hastings." He barked, already moving toward the sound. "We must find her." They raced through the darkened manor, the torch's beam bouncing off gilded frames and polished banisters. The scream had come from the servants' quarters, a maze of narrow corridors on the ground floor. As they neared, the air grew colder, and the faint scent of lavender lingered, mingling with something sharper iron perhaps, or blood. They found Clara slumped against a wall, her face pale, her hands trembling. A shattered vase lay at her feet, its fragments glinting in the torchlight. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. I saw him." "Who, mademoiselle?" Poirot demanded, kneeling beside her. "Who did you see?" Her eyes darted wildly, as if expecting a phantom to emerge from the shadows. "Mr. Vane. He was here, in the corridor, but his face, it was wrong, like a ghost, and then he was gone." Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind sifting through the possibilities. A ghost? None. Impossible. But a man masquerading as Vane, or someone using his name to terrify the household. That was plausible. He helped Clara to her feet, his tone gentle but firm. "You are safe now, mademoiselle. Tell me everything." Clara's story was fragmented, colored by fear. She had been fetching linens when she saw a figure in the corridor, dressed in Vane's distinctive overcoat. The figure had turned, its face obscured by shadow, and then vanished around a corner. She had screamed, knocking over the vase in her panic. Poirot listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face. "And this figure," he said, "did it speak? Did it carry anything?" Clara shook her head. "No, monsieur. It just stared. But I swear it was him." Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who looked skeptical but kept silent. "Very well, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "Return to your room and lock the door. We will investigate." As Clara hurried away, Hastings whispered, "Do you believe?" "Her, Poirot? A ghost? It's nonsense, surely." "Nonsense, perhaps," Poirot replied, his voice low. "But fear, Hastings, it is a powerful weapon. Someone wishes to frighten the household, to keep us from the truth. And this glove—" He held up the lavender-scented glove, his eyes narrowing. "It suggests Lady Beatrice knows more than she has told us." The power returned with a flicker, bathing the corridor in soft electric light. Poirot tucked the glove into his pocket, alongside the letters and key. "Come, Hastings. We must return to the study. The safe it has given. You ask much, but there is more to uncover." Back in the study, Poirot examined the key more closely. Its rose engraving matched a motif on the manor's grand staircase, suggesting it might unlock a door or chest in one of the upper rooms. The letters, too, demanded further study, each one a piece of the puzzle linking Eleanor's death, too. Vane's disappearance. Poirot's mind churned, connecting dots. Vane, a man investigating Eleanor's death. The locket with its cryptic message. The forged documents. And now, a key and love letters pointing to a long-buried scandal. Hastings. Poirot said, his voice sharp with realization. Vane's disappearance. It is not merely about him. It is about protecting the Marwood legacy. Someone in this house, perhaps Lord Marwood himself, will stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. The letters, they prove Eleanor's love for Reed, and perhaps her murder. Vane, he came too close to exposing it. Hastings nodded, his jaw set. "So what's our next move, Poirot?" "We can't just accuse Lord Marwood without proof." "Proof, mon ami, is what we shall find," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The key, it will lead us to the next piece of the puzzle. And this glove, it tells me Lady Beatrice is involved. Whether as ally or adversary, we must watch her closely." As they prepared to leave the study, Poirot paused, his gaze falling on the portrait of Lord Marwood. The man's painted eyes seemed to mock him, daring him to unravel the manners. Secrets. Poirot straightened, his resolve unshaken. The game, Hastings, it is afoot, and Hercule Poirot, he does not lose. The chapter closed with the two men stepping into the corridor, the weight of their discoveries heavy in their pockets. The manor loomed around them, its walls whispering of betrayal, love, and murder. Somewhere within its labyrinthine halls, the truth awaited, but so did danger. Chapter 7. The groundskeeper's heir. Rain had ceased, leaving Marwood Manor cloaked in a damp, silvery mist that curled around its turrets like a ghostly embrace. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the manor's sprawling gardens, his patent leather shoes sinking slightly into the sodden earth. His gloved hands clasped behind his back, he surveyed the landscape with the precision of a cartographer mapping uncharted territory. The events of the past days, Clarence Vane's disappearance, the blood-stained napkin, the cryptic photograph of a woman marked E.M., and the damning letters hinting at Lady Eleanor. Marwood's murder had woven a tapestry of intrigue that demanded his utmost attention. Now, a new thread had emerged. Michael Reed, the son of Thomas Reed, the long-missing groundskeeper implicated in Eleanor's tragic past. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful shadow, stood beside him, clutching a battered journal they had unearthed. In the village archives, the journal, penned by Thomas Reed, detailed his suspicions that Eleanor's death 20 years ago was no accident but a deliberate act, shrouded in Marwood family secrets. Poirot's little gray cells hummed with possibilities, but it was Michael Reed, now employed as the manor's gardener, who held the key to the next piece of the puzzle. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low, this journal is explosive. If Reed's right, Eleanor was murdered, and Lord Marwood's up to his neck in it. Do you think Michael knows more than he's letting on? Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. Mon ami, the son of a man who suspected murder does not work at the scene of the crime by chance. Michael Reed, he, is either a seeker of truth or a guardian of lies. We shall discover which. They approached the gardener's cottage, a modest stone structure nestled among ancient yews. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming roses, their petals glistening under the weak morning sun. Poirot knocked sharply on the door, his posture impeccable despite the muddy path. The door creaked open, revealing Michael. Reed, a wiry man in his 30s, with weathered hands and eyes that held a guarded intensity. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and his overalls bore the stains of honest toil. Monsieur Reed, Poirot began, his tone courteous yet firm. I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings. We wish to speak with you about a matter most urgent. Michael's eyes narrowed, flicking from Paulo's polished shoes to Hastings' earnest face. I've heard of you, Monsieur Poirot. The detective. What's this about? May we enter? Poirot asked, gesturing toward the cottage. The air, it is damp, and the conversation, it is delicate. Michael hesitated, then stepped aside, ushering them into a Spartan parlor. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting shadows on walls adorned with faded photographs of the manor's grounds in better days. A single chair sat by a small table, where a cup of tea steamed untouched. Michael remained standing, his arms crossed, as Poirot settled onto a wooden bench, his movements deliberate. Monsieur Reed, Poirot said, you are the son of Thomas Reed, the groundskeeper who served Marwood Manor 20 years ago, oui? Michael nodded, his jaw tightening. That's right. My father worked here until he didn't. What's this got to do with me? Poirot's eyes gleamed. It has everything to do with you, for it concerns the disappearance of Monsieur Clarence Vane, a guest at this manor, and the death of Lady Eleanor Marwood, your father's employer. We have found his journal, which speaks of murder. Michael's face paled, but he held Poirot's gaze. My father's been dead for years. Whatever he wrote, it's old news. Why drag it up now? Hastings interjected, holding up the journal. Because it's not just old news, Reed. Your father believed Eleanor was killed, and now Vane's gone missing under suspicious circumstances. You must know something. Michael's hands clenched into fists. I don't know anything about Vane. I keep to myself. Tend the gardens. That's my job. Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. Monsieur Reed, let us be frank. Clarence Vane came to this manor, seeking answers about Lady Eleanor. He spoke to you, did he not? Before he vanished? Michael's eyes darted to the fire, then back to Poirot. He might have asked me some questions. A few days ago, by the old oak near the stables. Wanted to know about my father, about what happened back then. I told him what I tell everyone. I was a boy when my father left. I don't know the full story. Yet you chose to work here, Poirot said, his voice soft but piercing, at the very place where your father's life unraveled. Why? Michael's shoulders sagged, and he sank into the chair, rubbing his face. Because this is home, in a way. My father loved these gardens, taught me everything he knew. When Lord Marwood offered me the job, I took it to feel close to him, and maybe to understand what drove him away. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. And what did you understand, Monsieur Reed? What did Vane seek from you? Michael hesitated, then stood and crossed to a wooden chest in the corner. He opened it, retrieving a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Vane gave me this. Said it was a copy of something he found in London. He thought I'd know what it meant. Poirot took the paper, unfolding it carefully. It was a hand-drawn map of the manor's grounds, meticulously detailed, with paths, hedges, and outbuildings marked in faded ink. At the center, near the old well, was a bold X drawn in red. Poirot's eyes narrowed. This X, it marks a place of significance, we? Michael nodded. Vane said it was where my father hid something. Evidence, maybe, about Lady Eleanor. He was cagey, wouldn't say more. I didn't trust him, so I kept the map, but told him to leave me. Alone. Hastings frowned. And you didn't think to tell anyone? A man's missing, Reed. I didn't know he'd disappear. Michael snapped, his voice rising. I thought he was just some nosy city type, stirring up trouble. I've got enough to deal with, keeping this place in order. Poirot folded the map, slipping it into his pocket. Monsieur Reed, your father's. Journal suggests he believed Lord Marwood was responsible for Lady Eleanor's death. Did you ever confront your employer? Michael's face hardened. No, Lord Marwood's been good to me. Gave me work, a place to live. Whatever happened. Back then, it's not my fight. Yet Vane's disappearance, it is now your concern, Poirot said. You will show us this well, Monsieur Reed, at once. The old well lay at the edge of the gardens, half hidden by overgrown brambles and shadowed by a gnarled willow. Its stone rim was moss-covered, and the wooden cover was warped from years of neglect. Michael led the way, his steps reluctant, while Poirot followed, his cane tapping rhythmically. Hastings carried a lantern, its light flickering in the gathering. Dusk, this is it, Michael said, stopping at the well. Haven't been here in years. It's been dry since I was a kid. Poirot circled the well, his eyes scanning every detail of the chipped stones, the rusted pulley, the faint scratches on the cover. Hastings, assist me, he said, gesturing to the wooden lid. Together, they heaved it aside, revealing a dark shaft that exhaled a damp, earthy chill. Hastings shone the lantern down, illuminating only cobwebs and shadows. Nothing but dirt, Hastings said, disappointed. Maybe Vane was wrong. Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami. The X on the map, it is precise. If there is evidence, it is here, hidden with care. He turned to Michael. Monsieur, you will help us search. Your father, he was a man of the earth. He would know how to conceal his secrets. Michael sighed, but nodded, fetching a rope and a metal hook from a nearby shed. There's a ledge inside, about 10 feet down, used to store tools before the well dried up. If my father hid anything, it'd be there. With Michael's guidance, Hastings lowered the hook, fishing blindly in the darkness. After several tense minutes, the hook caught something solid. "Got it!" Hastings exclaimed, hauling up a small, rusted tin box, its surface pitted with age. Poirot took it, his gloved fingers prying open the lid with care. Inside was a folded scarf, its silk faded, but stained with dark, unmistakable patches blood. Nestled within was a silver ring, engraved with the initials E.M. Poirot held the ring to the lantern's light, his expression grave. "This scarf, it is bloodied, like the napkin we found on the terrace. And this ring it belonged to. Lady Eleanor, I am certain." Michael stared, his face ashen. "That's my father's box. He used it for keepsakes. But that scarf, that ring, I've never seen them." Hastings gripped Michael's shoulder. "Come now, Reed. You expect us to believe you knew nothing about this?" "I swear it," Michael said, pulling free. "My father never told me about any box. He left when I was 12, said he had to go away for my safety. I thought he meant debts or trouble with the law. Not this." Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "Monsieur Reed, your father suspected murder, and now we have evidence that suggests violence. This scarf, it may belong to Monsieur Vane, or perhaps to another. We must learn more." As they sealed the box and prepared to return to the manor, a rustling in the brambles made them turn. A figure emerged, a young stable hand, breathless and wide-eyed. "Mr. Reed, Monsieur Poirot, I saw something the night that City Fellow vanished, near this very well." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Speak, jeune homme. What did you see?" The stable hand, Tom, swallowed hard. "It was late, after dinner. I was checking the horses when I saw Mr. Vane, right here, pacing like he was waiting for someone. And another figure came, didn't see you. It was too dark. They argued, low and fierce. And Vane, he just dropped, like he'd been hit. The other one dragged him off toward the woods. I was scared, didn't say nothing till now." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Merci, Tom. You have done well to speak. Return to the stables, and say nothing more for now." As Tom retreated, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, this changes everything. Vane was attacked here, and that scarf, it must be his." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone measured. "But the ring, it speaks of the past, of Eleanor. The two crimes, they are entwined like vines on this manor's walls. We must proceed with care." They returned to the cottage, where Poirot instructed Michael to keep the box hidden. "Monsieur Reed, you are now part of this investigation. If you know more, you will tell me, oui? For your father's sake, and for justice." Michael nodded, his eyes haunted. "I'll help, Monsieur Poirot. I want to know what happened to my father, and to Vane." As Poirot and Hastings stepped into the evening mist, the detective clutched the map, his thoughts a whirl of connections. The well had yielded secrets, but they were only fragments of a larger truth. The bloodied scarf, the ring, the stable hands. Tale all pointed to a confrontation at the heart of Marwood Manor's past. Poirot's resolve hardened. He would follow the trail to the old well's secrets, and beyond, to the truth that lay buried in the shadows. Chapter 8. The well of secrets. The air at Marwood Manor had grown thick with suspicion, each creak of the ancient house seeming to whisper accusations. Hercule Poirot, his black patent leather shoes glinting faintly in the dawn's pale light, stood at the edge of the manor's sprawling grounds, his gaze fixed on the old stone well that Michael Reed, the groundskeeper's son, had marked with an enigmatic X on his map. The morning mist clung to the grass, curling around the gnarled trees like ghostly fingers, and the distant caw of a crow punctuated the silence. Captain Hastings, ever loyal but visibly uneasy, stood beside him, clutching the map as if it were a lifeline. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, "this well gives me the shivers. It's been abandoned for years, hasn't it? What could possibly be down there?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind's relentless churn. "Mon ami, the abandoned places are often where the truth hides, waiting for someone with the courage or the curiosity to seek it out. This X is no idle mark. It is a beacon, and we shall follow it." The events of the past days had woven a complex tapestry of clues. Clarence Vane's vanishing, the blood-stained napkin, the locket with its cryptic message, E.M. Leves. And now Michael Reed's revelation that Vane had been sniffing around the matter's secrets, particularly those tied to Lady Eleanor Marwood's death 20 years prior. The map, found in Michael's quarters, had led them here to this forgotten corner of the estate where the well stood like a silent sentinel. Poirot's instincts told him that the answers to Vane's fate, and perhaps Eleanor's, lay within its depths. The well was an ancient structure, its stones moss-covered and weathered by decades of neglect. Ivy snaked up its sides, obscuring the crude iron pulley that once hauled water to the surface. Poirot circled it, his sharp eyes scanning for anything out of place. The ground nearby was uneven, as if recently disturbed, and a faint metallic glint caught his attention. He knelt, brushing away damp earth to reveal a small rusted key, its bow engraved with a delicate floral pattern. He held it up to the light, his expression unreadable. "Curious," he murmured. "A key, hidden near a well marked by an X. This is no coincidence, Hastings." Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "But what could it open?" "There's nothing here but the well itself." "Precisement," Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. "The well is the lock, mon ami. Or rather, what lies within it. We must investigate." Hastings blanched. "You don't mean to go down there, do you? It's pitch black, probably crawling with spiders, and who knows how deep it is." Poirot's smile was almost mischievous. "Fear not, Hastings. Hercule Poirot does not descend into wells like a common adventurer. We shall use method, order, and a touch of ingenuity. Fetch the groundskeeper's tools from the shed. A rope, a lantern, and perhaps a sturdy hook will suffice." Reluctantly, Hastings complied, trudging across the dew-soaked grass to the shed, while Poirot examined the well's rim. The stones were loose in places, and a faint, musty odor rose from the depths, mingling with the scent of wet earth. He leaned over, peering into the darkness, but saw only an inky void. The well was deep, its secrets well guarded. Yet the key in his hand suggested a purpose, a hidden compartment, a cache, or perhaps something more sinister. Hastings returned with a coil of rope, a lantern, and a grappling hook. "I hope you know what you're doing, Poirot," he said, setting the tools down. "This feels like tempting fate." "Fate, mon ami, is no match for the little gray cells," Poirot replied, lighting the lantern with a match. Its warm glow cast eerie shadows on the well's stones, revealing faint scratches around the rim marks that suggested recent activity. Someone has been here, and not long ago. "Observe, Hastings. The earth is disturbed, and these scratches are fresh. Our Mr. Vane, perhaps, was not so careful as he thought." Together, they secured the rope to the pulley, lowering the lantern into the well. The light swayed, illuminating damp, mossy walls that descended into darkness. After a moment, the lantern's glow caught something, a glint of fabric, perhaps, or metal. Poirot's pulse quickened. "Lower it further, Hastings," he instructed, his voice steady but urgent dot as the lantern descended. The glint resolved into a bundle wedged against the well's inner wall, about 10 feet down. It was too far to reach without descending, but Poirot had no intention of risking a climb. Instead, he maneuvered the grappling hook, carefully angling it to catch the bundle. After several tense attempts, the hook snagged, and he and Hastings pulled the rope with measured strength. The bundle emerged, dripping with moisture, and landed heavily on the grass dot. It was a small canvas sack, tied with fraying twine. Poirot knelt, his gloved hands deftly untying the knot. Inside, he found a bloodied scarf, its once vivid scarlet now darkened by stains, and a gold ring engraved with the initials E.M. His breath caught. The scarf was monogrammed with a faint C.V. Clarence Vane. The ring, however, was unmistakably tied to Lady Eleanor Marwood, its delicate craftsmanship echoing the locket Clara had found in the gallery. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low, "This is no mere coincidence. The scarf belongs to our vanished guest, and the ring, it is a relic of the past, a link to Eleanor's tragedy." Hastings stared at the items, his face pale. "Good Lord, Poirot, do you think Vane was killed? And this ring, could it mean Eleanor's death wasn't an accident?" "Precisement," Poirot replied, his eyes narrowing. "The well was a hiding place, but for whom? And why? We must proceed with care, for the one who placed these here may still be watching." As if on cue, a rustle in the nearby bushes made Hastings jump. Poirot's hand shot up, signaling silence. He stepped toward the sound, his cane raised like a weapon, but a figure emerged before he could act, a grizzled groundskeeper, his face weathered and his eyes wide with alarm. It was old Tom, a long-time servant of the manor who had worked under Thomas Reed, Michael's father. "Begging your pardon, sir," Tom stammered, clutching his cap. "I didn't mean to startle thee. I saw lights out here and thought it might be trouble." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Trouble, monsieur? Or perhaps you were drawn by curiosity. Tell me, when did you last see Mr. Clarence Vane?" Tom's eyes darted to the well, then back to Poirot. I saw him, sir, the night he disappeared. He was out here, poking around the well. Looked nervous, like he was expecting someone. I didn't think much of it till now." Poirot's mind raced. Tom's account placed Vane at the well, but was the groundskeeper a witness or something more? "And you did not think to report this, monsieur? A guest vanishes, and you remain silent?" Tom shuffled his feet, his voice barely audible. "Didn't want to stir things up, sir. The manor's got its secrets, and I've learned to keep my head down." "Secrets?" Poirot repeated, his tone sharp. "And what secrets might those be? Speak plainly, or I shall assume you have something to hide." Tom hesitated, then gestured toward the well. "Folks say this well's cursed, sir. Ever since Lady Eleanor died, there's been talk. Some say she was pushed, not fell, and that her spirit lingers here. I don't believe in ghosts, mind, but I've seen things, odd things. Lights at night, shadows moving where they shouldn't." Poirot's expression remained impassive, but his mind catalogued every word. "And this sack, monsieur? Did you see anyone place it here?" Tom shook his head vehemently. "No, sir, I swear it. I keep clear of this place after dark." Poirot dismissed him with a nod, instructing him to speak to no one of their discovery. As Tom shuffled away, Hastings leaned close. "Do you believe him, Poirot?" He seemed rattled. "Rattled, oui, but truthful?" Poirot's eyes glinted. "That remains to be seen. Come, Hastings, we must examine these items further. The scarf and ring are clues, but they are also warnings. Someone wishes to keep the past buried, and they will not hesitate to act again." They returned to the manor, the sack carefully wrapped to preserve its contents. In Poirot's room, he spread the items on a table, the lantern casting a soft glow over the bloodied scarf and gleaming ring. The scarf's stains were unmistakable blood, dried but recent, suggesting Vane had met with violence. The ring, however, was a puzzle. Its craftsmanship was exquisite, its gold band etched with a pattern that matched the locket's filigree. Poirot turned it over, noting a faint inscription. Inside, "Forever, T.R. Thomas Reed," Poirot murmured. "The groundskeeper who vanished after Eleanor's death. This ring was his gift to her, a token of love or perhaps a promise of escape." Hastings frowned. "But why hide it in the well? And why Vane's scarf? It's as if someone wanted us to find these, yet keep them secret." "Exactament," Poirot said, his fingers tracing the ring's edge. "This is a message, Hastings. But for whom?" Vane was no idle guest. He was hunting the truth of Eleanor's death, and someone ensured he would not find it. The well was their hiding place, but they did not count on Hercule Poirot. He slipped the ring into his pocket, alongside the key and locket, and turned his attention to the scarf. The bloodstains were concentrated at one end, as if it had been used to staunch a wound or to clean a blade. Poirot's mind conjured a grim scene. Vane, perhaps attacked near the well, his scarf catching the evidence of his fate. But where was his body, and who had placed the sack in the well? "We must trace the ring's origin," Poirot declared. "Its craftsmanship is distinctive. A jeweler in London may know more. But first we return to the manor. The household must be watched, for the killer is among them." As they re-entered the manor, the atmosphere was tense. Servants whispered in corners, and Lord Marwood's guest's Lady Beatrice, the sharp-tongued sister. Evelyn Carter, the journalist, with her own agenda. And Michael Reed, the groundskeeper's son, moved with the unease of those hiding secrets. Poirot's eyes scanned each face, searching for a telltale sign of guilt. At breakfast, he announced his intention to visit London, citing a need to consult an expert on a family heirloom. The lie was deliberate, designed to provoke a reaction. Lady Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "An heirloom, Monsieur Poirot? I hope it's not one of ours. The Marwoods guard their treasures closely." "Not a Elming," Poirot replied, his smile disarming. "But some treasures, madame, reveal more than their owners intend." Evelyn Carter, seated across the table, set down her teacup with a clink. "You're a curious man, Monsieur Poirot, always poking into things. Be careful you don't stir up trouble." Poirot's gaze met hers, unflinching. "Trouble, mademoiselle, is my profession, and I assure you, I am most adept at handling it." The meal continued in uneasy silence, but Poirot's mind was elsewhere. The ring, the scarf, the key, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was incomplete. He needed to know more about Thomas Reed, Eleanor's lover, and the circumstances of her death. The well had yielded secrets, but it had also raised questions. Who had attacked Vane? Why hide the evidence in such a precarious place? And what role did the manor's current inhabitants play in this drama? As the day progressed, Poirot arranged for a car to take him to London, but not before. Questioning Michael Reed once more. The young gardener was tending roses near the manor's entrance, his hands dirt-stained, but his eyes wary. "Mr. Reed," Poirot began, "you marked the well on your map. Why?" Michael's jaw tightened. "I told you, sir. Vane asked me about it. Said he'd heard stories about the well, about my father. I showed him the map to get him off my back. And yet," Poirot said, producing the key, "this was found near the well. Do you recognize it?" Michael's eyes widened, but he shook his head. "Never seen it before, I swear." Poirot studied him, noting the slight tremor in Thosely. "His hands. Turs bien. But know this, monsieur, the truth cannot remain buried forever, and Hercule Poirot is most persistent." He left Michael to his roses, the key burning a hole in his pocket. The trip to London would confirm the ring's origins, but Poirot's instincts told him the real answers lay here, at Marwood Manor. The well had spoken, its secrets emerging from the shadows, but the killer remained at large, watching, waiting. Poirot's little gray cells were alight with purpose. And he would not rest until the truth was fully revealed. The chapter closed with Poirot standing at the manor's gates, the ring and scarf safely stored, the key a silent promise of more. Discoveries. The storm clouds had parted, but a darker storm brewed within the manor's walls. As he prepared for London, Poirot knew the next clue would bring him closer to the heart of the mystery, and to the one who had silenced Clarence. Vain. Chapter 9. The jeweler's tale. The morning air in London carried a sharp bite, laced with the sooty tang of coal smoke and the faint perfume of early roses from street vendors' carts. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his polished shoes and tailored overcoat, stepped from a hansom cab onto the bustling thoroughfare of Bond Street. His mustache, meticulously groomed, twitched with anticipation as he adjusted his hat against the drizzle. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful shadow, followed. Close behind, his umbrella raised like a shield against the city's unpredictable whims. Their destination, the discreet shop of Mr. Archibald Wren, a jeweler of repute whose name had surfaced in connection to the mysterious ring found in the well at Marwood Manor, ring engraved with the initials of the long-deceased Lady Eleanor. Marwood. The journey from the manor had been a calculated risk. Poirot's discoveries, the locket with its cryptic message, E.M. Leves, the forged documents in Clarence Vane's hidden compartment, the bloodied scarf, and now the ring had woven a tapestry of intrigue that pointed beyond the manors. Stone walls. The ring, with its intricate filigree and unmistakable craftsmanship, was a beacon, and Poirot's little gray cells demanded he follow its light to London. Hastings, though initially skeptical of leaving the manor with Vane's disappearance unresolved, had been swayed by Poirot's insistence that the ring held the key to unraveling the mystery's deeper roots. Really, Poirot, Hastings said, dodging a puddle, this jeweler chap might not know a thing. What if the ring's just a coincidence? People engrave initials on jewelry all the time. Non, Hastings, Poirot replied, his voice a velvet reprimand. Coincidence is the refuge of the lazy mind. The ring, it was hidden with purpose, in a well with a scarf stained by blood. Its maker, Monsieur Wren, will tell us who commissioned it and per quoy. This, I am certain, will lead us closer to the truth of Monsieur Vane's fate and to Lady Eleanor's. The shop of Archibald Wren was a narrow, unassuming establishment, wedged between a tailor and a tea importer. Its window displayed a modest array of brooches and pocket watches, but the gleam of gold and the sparkle of gemstones hinted at a craftsman's skill. A bell tinkled as Poirot pushed open the door, revealing a dimly lit interior where the air smelled of polished metal and old velvet. Behind a glass counter stood Mr. Wren himself, a wiry man in his 60s with silver hair and spectacles perched on a hawkish nose. His hands, gnarled but steady, paused in the act of polishing a sapphire as he looked up. "Good morning, gentlemen," Wren said, his voice crisp but cautious. "How may I assist you?" Poirot removed his hat, placing it carefully on the counter, and produced the ring, its silver band catching the light. "Monsieur Wren, I am Hercule Poirot, and this is my associate, Captain Hastings. We seek information about this ring, which I believe was crafted by your hand. It bears the initials E.M. and was found under most curious circumstances." Wren's eyes narrowed as he took the ring, turning it over with a jeweler's precision. His fingers traced the engraving, and a shadow crossed his face. "Yes," he said slowly, "this is my work. I made it some 20 years ago, in the summer of 1905, a commission for a gentleman, though I confess I never knew his full name." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A gentleman, you say? Describe him, s'il vous plaît." Wren set the ring down, his hands retreating to the safety of his apron. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a rough manner. He had the look of a man who worked. Outdoors calloused hands, sunburned skin. He called himself Tom, I believe. Paid in cash, insisted on discretion. Said the ring was for a lady he intended to marry. Hastings leaned forward, barely containing his excitement. Tom? Could that be Thomas Reed, the groundskeeper from Marwood Manor? Calmez-vous, Hastings, Poirot murmured, though his own mind was racing. Thomas Reed, the missing groundskeeper whose journal had hinted at foul play in Eleanor's death, was now linked to the ring. Monsieur Wren, this man? Tommy gave no surname? No other details? Wren shook his head. None. But there was another party involved. The commission came through a letter, written by someone who preferred anonymity. They paid half the cost up front, sent by courier. The letter bore a wax seal crest, I think, though I didn't study it closely. Poirot's fingers drummed lightly on the counter. A crest, you say? Did it resemble this? He produced a small sketch he had made of the Marwood family crest, found on the vellum in Vane's hidden compartment. Wren adjusted his spectacles, peering at the sketch. Yes, that's it. A lion and a rose, entwined. I remember it now. The letter instructed me to deliver the ring to Tom. No questions asked. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, whose eyes widened. The Marwood crest, Hastings whispered. Someone in the family was involved. We, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low. But who? And why would they fund a ring for a groundskeeper's betrothed, only for it to end up hidden in a well? He turned back to Wren. One final question, monsieur. Did this Tom ever mention a woman named Eleanor? Wren's face paled, and he busied himself with a cloth, wiping the counter unnecessarily. Eleanor? He didn't. But there was talk years ago in the trade. A scandal at Marwood Manor. A lady who died. Some said it wasn't an accident. I don't gossip, mind you, but jewelers hear things. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his satisfaction. Merci, Monsieur Wren. You have been most helpful. Should you recall anything else, you will contact me at Marwood Manor, we? As they stepped back into the drizzle, Hastings could barely contain his thoughts. Poirot? This is huge. Thomas Reed commissioned the ring for Eleanor, and someone in the Marwood family paid for it. But why hide it in the well? And what does it have to do with Vane? Patience, mon ami, Poirot said, raising a hand. The ring is a thread, and we are weaving a tapestry. We return to the manor, but first I must send a telegram. There is another lead we must pursue. Back at Marwood Manor, the atmosphere had grown heavier, as if the house itself sensed the tightening net of Poirot's investigation. The drizzle had followed them from London, cloaking the estate in a grey mist that blurred the edges of its turrets and chimneys. Poirot, however, was undeterred, his mind alight with the jeweller's revelations. The ring, crafted for Thomas, Reed and funded by an anonymous Marwood, was a link to Eleanor's death, and Poirot suspected, to Vane's disappearance. But the manor held more immediate concerns. Upon their arrival, they were met by a flustered housekeeper, Mrs. Dobbs, whose apron was askew and whose eyes were wide with panic. Mr. Poirot, sir, it's Clara the maid. She's gone, run off. In the night, and we found this in her room. She thrust a crumpled note into Poirot's hands, her voice trembling. It was under her pillow. Poirot smoothed the note, its ink smudged but legible. Stop digging or join EM. The handwriting was sharp, angular, and unmistakably deliberate, as if the writer had taken care to disguise their natural script. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he handed the note to Hastings. Mon Dieu, Hastings, he said. The plot, it thickens. Clara has fled, and someone wishes to silence those who seek the truth. This note, it is a warning, but also a clue. Hastings frowned, studying the paper. Join EM? That's chilling, Poirot. Do you think Clara knew something about Vane's disappearance? Certainement, Poirot replied. Clara found the locket and now she is gone. But where? And why this note, left so carelessly? It is almost as if the writer wished it to be found. They made their way to Clara's small room in the servants' quarters, a sparse space with a narrow bed and a single window overlooking the stables. The room was tidy, but signs of haste were evident. A drawer half open, a shawl discarded on the floor. Poirot knelt by the bed, his gloved fingers probing the mattress. With a soft exclamation, he extracted a single hairpin, its tip bent as if used to pick a lock. "Tiens," he murmured. Clara. She was not merely a maid. This hairpin suggests she was searching for something, or someone was searching her. Room. Hastings, rummaging through the drawer, pulled out a small diary. "Look at this, Poirot. It's Clara's full of notes about the manor, the guests, even Vane. Listen to this. Mr. V. asked about the old well. Said he'd seen something there. I told him to be careful." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Raiment? So Clara knew of Vane's interest in the well, where we found the ring and scarf. She was no innocent bystander. Hastings. We must find her before the writer of this note does." The search for Clara became the manor's undercurrent, with servants whispering and guests exchanging uneasy glances. Poirot, however, turned his attention to the note's handwriting. In the drawing-room, he gathered samples from the household. A guest book signed by Lady Beatrice, Dr. Finch, and Evelyn Carter, a letter from Lord Marwood, and a menu written by the butler, Mr. Grayson. Under the guise of a casual inquiry, Poirot compared the scripts, his magnifying glass poised like a hawk's eye. The angular strokes of the threatening note matched none perfectly, but a faint similarity emerged in the flourish of Lady Beatrice's signature. Poirot filed this away, his mind turning to her earlier agitation when Eleanor's name was mentioned. Could the sharp-tongued sister of Lord Marwood be involved? Or was the handwriting a deliberate misdirection? As evening descended, Poirot and Hastings ventured to the village, hoping to trace Clara's whereabouts. The local inn, the Rose and Crown, was a hum of gossip, its taproom alive with the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation. The innkeeper, a stout woman named Mrs. Harrow, recognized Clara's description at once. She was here last night," Mrs. Harrow said, wiping her hands on a rag. "Came in a right state, pale as a ghost. Said she needed to get to London, quick-like. Paid for a room, but left before dawn. Didn't say where she was going, but she kept looking over her shoulder, like she was being followed." Poirot's fingers tapped his cane. "Merci, madame. Did she leave anything behind? A bag, perhaps, or a note?" Mrs. Harrow shook her head. "Nothing, sir. But there was a man asking after her this morning. Tall, with a scar on his cheek. Didn't give a name, just said he was a friend." Hastings's jaw tightened. "A scar? That doesn't sound like anyone at the manor." "None, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low. "But it suggests Clara's flight was not unprompted. Someone is hunting her, just as they hunted Vane." Back at the manor, the evening meal was a strained affair. Lord Marwood presided with forced geniality, while Lady Beatrice picked at her food, her eyes darting to Poirot. Dr. Finch drank heavily, and Evelyn Carter scribbled in a notebook, her journalist's curiosity undimmed. Poirot, ever the observer, noted the undercurrents, the butler's stiff posture, the maid's hushed whispers, the absence of Clara's familiar presence as dessert was served. Poirot rose, his voice cutting through the tension. "Mesdames et messieurs, a moment. I have learned that Clara, the maid, has fled the manor, leaving behind a note that warns of danger to those who probe the secrets of this house. I ask you now, does anyone know of a man with a scar on his cheek, seen in the village this morning?" The room froze. Lady Beatrice's spoon clattered to her plate, and Dr. Finch choked on his wine. Lord Marwood's face was a mask, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. Evelyn Carter's pen paused, her eyes narrowing. "No one?" Poirot pressed, his gaze sweeping the table. "'Ter's been." "Then let me share another discovery. The ring found in the well, engraved with E.M., was crafted for a man named Tom Likely Thomas Reed, the groundskeeper who vanished after Lady Eleanor's death. It was paid for by someone bearing the Marwood crest. I wonder who among you might know of such a commission." The silence was deafening, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then Lady Beatrice stood, her voice sharp. "This is absurd, Poirot. You're chasing ghosts. Eleanor's death was an accident, and this ring business is nonsense. I won't sit here and be accused." "Madame, I accuse no one yet," Poirot said smoothly. "But the truth, it is like a rose. It blooms in its own time, and its thorns protect its secrets. I will find Clara, and I will learn who wrote that note." As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the fireplace where a single rose petal lay among the ashes, its edges charred but unmistakable. He picked it up, his mind racing. The petal, like the one found in Vane's room, was no accident. Someone was leaving signs, taunting him or guiding him. The chapter closed with Poirot standing by the fire, the petal in his hand, his little gray cells weaving the threads of the mystery. The jeweler's tale had confirmed Thomas Reed's connection to Eleanor, but the threatening note and Clara's flight suggested a living danger, one that stalked the manor's halls. And somewhere, in the shadows, a man with a scar was searching too. Poirot's resolve hardened. He would find Clara, unmask the note's author, and uncover the truth of Eleanor's death, no matter the cost. Chapter 10. Lady Beatrice's Alibi. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Marwood Manor, casting a lattice of light and shadow across the oak-paneled dining room. Hercule Poirot sat at the polished mahogany table. A cup of café lay cooling untouched before him. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the faces of the household gathered for breakfast. Lord Reginald Marwood, his jaw set in a mask of aristocratic composure. His sister, Lady Beatrice Marwood, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of a teacup. And Captain Hastings, ever loyal, casting furtive glances at Poirot as if awaiting a revelation. The air was thick with unspoken tension. The events of the past days, Clarence Vane's disappearance, the coated locket, the jeweler's tale, and the threatening note hanging like a storm cloud over the manor. Poirot's little gray cells were ablaze. The note found in Clara's possession, its stark warning, "Stop digging or join E. May," had pointed a finger at Lady Beatrice. Its handwriting, with its distinctive looping G's and angular T's, matched samples he had discreetly collected from her correspondence. Yet suspicion was not proof, and Poirot knew better than to accuse without certainty. Lady Beatrice, with her poised demeanor and sharp tongue, was a formidable figure, but was she a murderer? Or merely a guardian of the Marwood family's tarnished secrets? He rose, adjusting his immaculate lapels, and addressed the room with a measured tone. "Mesdames et messieurs, I must request a private audience with Lady Beatrice. There is a matter of some urgency that requires clarification." Lord Marwood's fork paused mid-air, a piece of kedgeree dangling precariously. "Beatrice? What's this about, Poirot?" "Surely you don't." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him with a polite but firm gesture. "It is a matter of routine. My lord, a small detail to be resolved. Lady Beatrice, if you please." Beatrice's eyes, a piercing blue, met Poirot's with a flicker of defiance. She set her teacup down with a delicate clink and rose, her silk dress rustling. "Very well, Monsieur Poirot. Let us dispense with this nonsense quickly." They adjourned to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes and dominated by a marble fireplace. Hastings followed, at Poirot's subtle nod, his notepad at the ready. Beatrice settled into a high-backed chair, her posture regal, her hands folded primly in her lap. "Well," she said, her voice clipped. "What is? This urgent matter?" Poirot paced slowly before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. "Madame, a note was discovered in the possession of the maid, Clara, who has since fled the manor. This note, it contains a warning most grave. Stop digging, or join E.M. I have reason to believe you wrote it." Beatrice's lips parted, a sharp intake of breath betraying her composure. "That's preposterous. Why would I write such a thing? I've never even seen this note." Poirot produced the folded paper from his pocket, holding it aloft, but not handing it over. "The handwriting, madame, is unmistakable. The flourish of your G's, the slant of your T's, they are as distinctive as a signature. Do you deny?" "It?" Beatrice's eyes darted to the note and back to Poirot. For a moment she seemed to waver, but she quickly regained her steel. "I deny it utterly. Anyone could mimic my hand. This manor is crawling with secrets and schemers. You've seen the forged documents in Vane's room clearly. Someone is adept at deception." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "A fair point, madame, but let us consider another matter. You were close to your late sister-in-law, Lady Eleanor Marwood, were you not? You knew of her entanglements, perhaps? With a certain Thomas Reed?" Beatrice's face paled, though her expression remained defiant. "Eleanor was my friend, yes. A rare soul in this stifling house. As for Thomas Reed, I knew him as the groundskeeper. A quiet man, devoted to his work. If there was more between them, it was no business of mine." Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze locking onto hers. "And yet, madame, you know more than you say. The jeweler in London confirmed that a ring, engraved with Eleanor's initials, was crafted for a man matching Reed's description. You were in London often during those years, were you not? Perhaps you knew of their plans to flee together, plans that ended in tragedy." Beatrice's fingers tightened in her lap, her knuckles whitening. "You're fishing, Monsieur Poirot. I was fond of Eleanor, yes, but I had no part in her death. It was an accident, as the inquest ruled. As for Reed, he left after her death. Grief, perhaps, I don't know." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but unyielding. "And Clarence Vane? Did you know why he came to Marwood Manor?" "He was no mere guest, madame. He was investigating Eleanor's death, and someone, perhaps—" "You wished to silence him." Beatrice stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is absurd. I had nothing to do with Vane's disappearance. I barely spoke to the man. If you must accuse someone, look to my brother's temper, or that shifty butler, Grayson. They've more to hide than I." Poirot raised an eyebrow, undeterred. "Very well, madame. Let us test your innocence. Where were you on the night of Vane's disappearance, 3 nights ago, between 8 and midnight?" Beatrice hesitated, her eyes flickering to the window, where the morning light glinted off the frost-covered lawns. "I was in London," she said finally. "I took the evening train to visit an old friend, Mrs. Agatha Langley. I stayed at her townhouse in Belgravia until the next morning. You can verify it with her." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And this Mrs. Langley, she will confirm your presence?" "Of course," Beatrice snapped. "She's a respectable widow, not some conspirator in your imagined plot. I returned to the manor the following day, as the household can attest." Hastings scribbled furiously, glancing at Poirot for guidance. Poirot gave a slight nod, signaling him to continue. "Merci, madame," Poirot said. "Your cooperation is noted. But before we conclude, I must ask to see your quarters. A small formality to ensure no oversights." Beatrice's eyes narrowed, but she acquiesced with a curt nod. "If it will put an end to this farce, fine. Follow me." They ascended the grand staircase to the second floor, where Beatrice's suite overlooked the manor's rose garden. The room was a study in elegance. Silk wallpaper in soft lavender, a four-poster bed draped in velvet, and a vanity cluttered with crystal perfume bottles. Poirot's eyes swept the space, noting the orderly chaos of a woman who valued appearances, but lived with passion. He moved to the writing desk, where a stack of letters and a silver inkstand sat. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the desk. Beatrice crossed her arms. "Go ahead. You'll find nothing but invitations and bills." Poirot opened a drawer, his gloved fingers deftly sorting through papers. Beneath a pile of stationery, he found a small velvet pouch. He opened it, revealing a glass vial, no larger than a thimble, filled with a colorless liquid. He held it to the light, his expression darkening. "And this, madame, what is it?" Beatrice's composure faltered, her voice catching. It's nothing. A remedy for my nerves, prescribed by my physician in London." Poirot uncorked the vial, sniffing delicately. "A remedy, you say? This has the faint odor of cyanide, madame. A curious choice for nerves." Beatrice's hands flew to her throat, her eyes wide. "Cyanide? That's impossible. I've never seen that vial before. Someone must have planted it." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Planted, you say? Like the note, perhaps? Or the forged documents in Vane's room? The manor, it seems, is a garden of deception." Hastings stepped forward, his voice tentative. "Poirot, do you think?" Poirot silenced him with a glance. "We shall verify your alibi, Lady Beatrice. If Mrs. Langley confirms your presence in London, you are cleared of Vane's disappearance. But the vial, the note, these raise questions. I advise you to remain forthcoming." Beatrice sank into a chair, her defiance crumbling. "I swear, I didn't write that note, and that vial. I don't know how it got there. But Eleanor, I knew she was unhappy with Reginald. She confided in me, said she loved someone else. Reed, I suppose. I told her to be careful, but she laughed it off, said she was free to choose her own path. Then she was gone, and I've carried that guilt ever since." Poirot's expression softened, though his mind remained sharp. "Guilt, madame? For what?" "For not stopping her," Beatrice whispered, "for not warning her about Reginald's jealousy. He was possessive, cruel when crossed. I always wondered if he had a hand in her death. But I had no proof, and I was abroad when it happened. Paris for a season of concerts. I came back to find her dead and Reed gone." Poirot nodded slowly, filing away her words. "Merci, madame. Your candor is appreciated. We shall speak again." As they left Beatrice's room, Hastings whispered, "Do you believe her, Poirot? That alibi sounds solid, but that vial—" "Patience, mon ami," Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. "The alibi we shall verify. But the vial, the note they suggest someone wishes to implicate Lady Beatrice. Or perhaps she plays a deeper game. We must proceed with care." Back in the library, Poirot dispatched a telegram to Mrs. Agatha Langley in Belgravia, requesting confirmation of Beatrice's visit. While awaiting a reply, he and Hastings combed through the manor's guest logs, confirming Beatrice's absence. On the night of Vane's disappearance, the station master at Thornwick also verified her departure on the evening train, returning the next day. By midday, a telegram from Mrs. Langley arrived, confirming Beatrice's overnight stay. Poirot said. The telegram down, his fingers steepled. So, Lady Beatrice was indeed in London. She could not have harmed Vane. But the vial, the note, these are not accidents. Someone in this manner seeks to divert suspicion, to muddy the waters. And I, Hercule Poirot, shall find them. Hastings frowned. But who? Lord Marwood? Grayson? Or someone we haven't considered? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. All in good time, Hastings. The truth, it is like a fine tapestry. Each thread must be examined before the pattern emerges. For now, we know Lady Beatrice is not our killer, but she is not without secrets. Her knowledge of Eleanor and Reed, it is a piece of the puzzle. We must now find the next. As they stepped into the hall, the manor seemed to pulse with hidden truths, its walls whispering of betrayal and loss. Poirot's resolve hardened. The mystery of Clarence Vane and the shadow of Eleanor Marwood grew ever clearer, but the final revelation remained just out of reach. He would not rest until every secret was laid bare. Chapter 11. The False Confession. The mist that clung to Marwood Manor's grounds had thickened into a dense fog, shrouding the estate in an eerie veil that seemed to whisper secrets with every gust. Hercule Poirot stood in the manor's library, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes scanning the shelves of leather-bound tomes as if they might yield answers to the labyrinthine mystery before him. The disappearance of Clarence Vane, the blood-stained napkin, the cryptic photograph marked E.M., the damning letters pointing to Lady Eleanor Marwood's murder, the bloodied scarf and ring found in the old well, all had led to this moment. Michael Reed, the groundskeeper's son, had just confessed to attacking Vane, claiming he caught the man stealing family secrets. But Poirot, with his unerring instinct for truth, sensed a lie woven into the gardener's words. Captain Hastings paced by the fireplace, his face a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "I say, Poirot, this is a bombshell." Reed confesses too. Attacking Vane, and yet you're standing there as calm as a cucumber. Don't you believe him? Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile flickering. Mon ami, a confession is like a diamond. It may sparkle, but only under scrutiny does. One see its flaws. Monsieur Reed's story, it does not align with the facts. We must test it, to separate the truth from the facade. The library's heavy oak doors creaked open, and Michael Reed entered, escorted by the butler, Mr. Grayson. Michael's weathered face was drawn, his eyes red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept. His gardener's overalls were streaked with dirt, and his hands fidgeted nervously. "You wanted to see me again, Monsieur Poirot?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Oui, Monsieur Reed," Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit. You have told us a grave thing, that you attacked Monsieur Vane the night he vanished, believing him to be stealing secrets about your father and Lady Eleanor. But I, Hercule Poirot, am not convinced. We shall reenact this moment, to see if your story holds." Michael's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I'll do whatever you need. I told you the truth," Hastings snorted. "Truth? You expect us to believe you just happened to catch Vane snooping, gave him a thrashing, and then he vanished into thin air?" "Enough, Hastings," Poirot said sharply. "We do not accuse without proof. Monsieur Reed, you say this altercation occurred near the old well, where we found the scarf and ring. Let us return there, under the same conditions, night, fog, and all. You will show us precisely what happened." Michael rose, his movements reluctant. "Fine, but it won't change what I said." The trio, accompanied by Grayson, ventured into the fog-choked night, their lanterns casting feeble beams that barely pierced the gloom. The old well, its mossy stones slick with moisture, stood like a silent sentinel at the edge of the gardens. The willow's branches swayed mournfully, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Poirot positioned himself near the well, his cane planted firmly in the ground, while Hastings held the lantern aloft. "Monsieur Reed," Poirot began, "you claim you confronted Vane here, at approximately 10 o'clock, after he left the dining room. You struck him, and he fled. Show us." Michael hesitated, then stepped forward, pointing to a spot near the well's rim. "It was here. I was checking the grounds part of my rounds. I saw Vane, poking around with a torch, like he was looking for something. I asked what he was doing, and he got cagey, said it was none of my business. I saw him slip something into his pocket papers, I thought, maybe about my father. I lost my temper, grabbed him, and hit him just once in the jaw. He stumbled, then ran off toward the woods. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And you did not pursue him? No, Michael said, his voice low. I figured he'd had enough. I went back to my cottage. Poirot turned to Grayson. Monsieur Grayson, you were on duty that night. Did you see Monsieur Reed return to his cottage? The butler, his face impassive, nodded. I saw Mr. Reed crossing the lawn around 10:15, heading toward his cottage. He seemed agitated, but I thought nothing of it. Hastings frowned. 10:15? That's barely enough time for a scuffle and Vane to vanish. Poirot, something's off. Precisement, Poirot said, his voice sharp. Let us test the timing. Monsieur Reed, you will play yourself. Hastings, you will be Vane. Begin. Hastings, looking slightly ridiculous in his tweed jacket, positioned himself near the well, pretending to rummage with an imaginary torch. Michael approached, his movements stiff, and mimed a confrontation. What are you doing here? He barked, grabbing Hastings by the collar. He raised his fist, pausing for effect, then shoved Hastings backward. Hastings stumbled dramatically, clutching his jaw. Ow! Easy, Reed. I'm supposed to run now, right? Oui, Poirot said, consulting his pocket watch. Run, Hastings, toward the woods, as Monsieur Vane did. I will time you. Hastings dashed off, his lantern bobbing as he disappeared into the fog. Poirot counted silently, his lips moving. After a minute, he turned to Michael. Monsieur, you say Vane ran, and you returned to your cottage. Yet the stable hand, Tom, saw Vane attacked and dragged away, not running. And Monsieur Grayson saw you at 10:15. The cottage is a 5-minute walk. The timing, it does not permit a confrontation, a blow, and a retreat in so short a span. Michael's face crumpled, and he sank onto the well's rim, burying his head in his hands. All right, all right. I lied. I didn't hit Vane. I made it up. Hastings, returning breathless, gasped. Made it up? Why the devil would you confess to something you didn't do? Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. Monsieur Reed, you protect someone, do you not? Speak the truth, or the consequences, they will be grave. Michael's shoulders shook, and when he looked up, tears glistened in his eyes. It's my mother, all right. She's alive, living in a village nearby. Vane came to me, asking about my father, about Lady Eleanor. He said he had proof my mother helped my father hide evidence of Eleanor's murder. I panicked. If Lord Marwood found out, he'd ruin her, throw her out of her home. She's all I have left. So I lied, said I attacked Vane to make it seem like. I stopped him, to keep anyone from digging deeper. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Your mother, she knew of your father's suspicions? Yes, Michael whispered. She told me years ago that father thought Lord Marwood killed Eleanor out of jealousy. Father was her lover, see? They were planning to run away together. When Eleanor died, father fled, left us to protect us. Mother's been terrified of Marwood ever since. Hastings shook his head, bewildered. But why confess, man? You've just made yourself a suspect. I thought it'd stop the questions, Michael said, his voice breaking. I thought if I took the blame, you'd leave my mother alone. Poirot placed a hand on Michael's shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. Monsieur, your loyalty, it is admirable, but the truth, it is the only path to justice. We will. Speak with your mother, but I assure you, I seek only the truth, not her ruin. As they prepared to leave the well, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a glint in the fog, a metallic object half buried in the mud. He knelt, retrieving a small brass key, its surface etched with a delicate M. "Curio," he murmured, pocketing. "Get this key. It may unlock more than we expect." Back in the manor, Poirot led Michael and Hastings to the drawing room, where a fire roared, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The room was empty. The other guests retired for the night, but the air hummed with tension. Poirot sat, gesturing for Michael to do the same. "Monsieur Reed, tell me of this proof Vane claimed to have. What did he show you?" Michael rubbed his neck, his voice low. "He had a photograph, same one you found in his cigarette case. Said it was of Eleanor, but there was something else writing on the back. Not just E.M. There was a number, like a code. The 9th of March 17. I didn't know what it meant, but he said it pointed to a hiding place in the manor." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A code, you say? And where is this photograph now?" "I don't know," Michael admitted. "He took it with him that night. I haven't seen it since." Hastings leaned forward. "Poirot, that photograph's the key to all this. If we can find it, we might find Vane or what happened to him." "We," Poirot said. "But it is not only the photograph we must seek. This code, the 9th of March 17, it suggests a location, perhaps a room, a safe, or—" His voice trailed off, and he rose, crossing to a portrait of Lord Marwood's grandfather, its gilt frame gleaming. He studied it, then turned back to Michael. "Monsieur, you know this manor well. Is there a place hidden, perhaps where such a code might apply?" Michael frowned, thinking. "There's the old wing, closed off since Eleanor's time. Father used to say it had secret rooms, places the family hid valuables during the war. I've never been inside, but there's a locked door in the east corridor, number 17. Poirot's mustache quivered with excitement. Number 17. The code begins with 17. This is no coincidence. We must investigate this door. But first, we return to Vane's room. The photograph, it may still be there, overlooked. Vane's guest chamber was as they had left it, its sparse furnishings bathed in moonlight, filtering through the fog. Poirot moved with purpose, checking. Under the bed, behind the wardrobe, and inside the valise. His fingers brushed the lining of Vane's coat, still hanging in the wardrobe, and he paused, feeling a slight bulge. With a deft movement, he tore the stitching, revealing a hidden pocket. Inside was the photograph, its torn edge jagged, and on the back, the code, the 9th of March 17. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed, holding it to the light. The woman's face, Eleanor's, was clearer now, her expression one of quiet resolve. The code, written in Vane's precise hand, seemed to pulse with significance. Hastings peered over his shoulder. "That's it, Poirot. The code must point to that door in the old wing. Shall we go now?" "None," Poirot said, pocketing the photograph. "It is late, and the fog, it is treacherous. We will investigate at dawn, when the light is clear and the mind sharp. Monsieur Reed, you will accompany us. Your knowledge of the grounds may yet be vital." Michael nodded, his face a mix of relief and dread. "I'll help, Monsieur Poirot, for my father and for my mother." As they left the room, Poirot's thoughts raced. Michael's false confession had been a desperate act to protect his mother, but it had revealed a new path, the old wing, the coded door, and the secrets it might hold. The brass key in his pocket felt heavier, its purpose unclear but tantalizing. Vane's fate, Eleanor's murder, and the Marwood family's hidden shame were converging, and Poirot knew the truth was within reach, waiting to be unlocked. Chapter closed with the fog pressing against the manor's windows, as if guarding its secrets for one more night. Poirot, undeterred, resolved to follow the code, to open the door marked 17, and to unravel the mystery that bound the past to the present.